Chapter 292. Oh my God. We're done for. The moment the bomb countdown timer sounded, some of the people present had already covered their heads and laid on the ground. Everyone was cursing Yun Jian. She was just a little kid, what was she doing here? Everyone here was going to be buried here because of her. At this time, other than Yun Jian, who was standing still with her arms crossed, everyone around her, including the experts, was lying on the ground, trying to minimize the damage. The last 10 seconds of the countdown timer ended. The people lying on the ground with their hands on their heads remained in this position for a full 10 seconds. At this time, the group of people who were lying on the ground miserably thought that the bomb was going to explode suddenly heard the girl's melodious voice. Lying on the ground, is it fun? Everyone's nerves twitched violently. Nothing happened? They didn't die. The bomb didn't explode? This meant that the time bomb had really been defused. The group of people who stood up in a daze were instantly dumbfounded. Everyone couldn't help but gasp in their hearts. She had cut the yellow wire correctly. This also meant that if Yun Jian hadn't appeared just now, all of them would have been buried here because of the expert's dictatorial decision. When everyone came to their senses, they took a deep breath and came back to their senses with lingering fear. Only then did they feel embarrassed. Especially the expert who had lectured Yun Jian just now, his old face was flushed red. Little girl, thank you so much just now. If it weren't for you, we would have. A special police officer who had been contemptuous of Yun Jian just now stood up. He wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and apologized to Yun Jian. Before he could finish his sentence, Yun Jian interrupted him. No need. With that, Yun Jian frowned slightly and walked out. The people present wanted to say something, but when they thought of their actions just now, they didn't have the face to say anything. Everyone's faces were red as they watched Yun Jian leave with extremely embarrassed eyes. After Yun Jian ran out of the factory, her eyes narrowed fiercely. She raised her eyebrows slightly and ran in a direction. The person who set up the Kosha mercenaries' exclusive AK-4 time bomb must not have gone far. The message she received from Gu Junjian confirmed this point. Now, Gu Junjian was leading the army's special forces to surround the person who set the time bomb. They were currently in the direction Yun Jian ran in. She ran in the direction she had judged. After running for about 3 to 4 kilometers, she soon saw a group of fully armed special forces soldiers surrounding a residential house in 4 directions. A group of neighbors who were watching the show stood around, but these ordinary people who were far away from the scene. These sarcastic people were afraid, but they couldn't help but be curious as they stood there looking at the scene. Yun Jian heard a lot of gossips when she passed by. Hey, did you guys know that a family in the residential building in front of us has been taken hostage by a bad guy? Did you see that? Even the special forces soldiers. That's why they surrounded the residential building. I heard that the person is very powerful. He even set up a time bomb not far from here on Hudu Road. But now that the bomb disposal experts have gone over, the bomb must have been defused. Someone seemed to have seen the whole process with his own eyes as he bragged exaggeratedly. It was as if he was a witness to everything. Are you serious? Something like this can happen here? What should the family who was held hostage do? Someone shouted in panic. Chapter 293. It wasn't just the gossipy women in the village who liked to gossip when they got together. Even the rich women in the city could gossip when they got together. When Yun Jian walked past the 2 women, she couldn't help but sneer in her heart. Then, she walked towards the residential building that was surrounded by people. Because the people watching the show were standing far away, Yun Jian became very conspicuous when she walked away from them and walked towards the empty area where no one dared to go. Look, that little girl is actually going that way. Didn't you see the special forces lying in ambush all around? There are still bad people in that residential building. This little girl is too daring. The woman who was the most talkative couldn't help but brag in front of the crowd. Because of this woman's brag, the crowd became restless again. But no one stood out to stop Yunjian and said, "Little girl, it's dangerous, come back quickly. Little girl, it's too dangerous here. Go back quickly." A special forces soldier from far away saw Yunjian running over and thought that she didn't know the situation there. He waved at Yunjian enthusiastically and stopped her from going any further. Yunjian was already close to the residential building. "Oh my God, this little girl doesn't know what's good for her." The special forces told her not to go over, but she still went over. Humph, if she doesn't believe the police, she won't even know how she died later. The woman from earlier started to evaluate from an outsider's point of view. "That's right, that's right." The group of people around them echoed. That woman hid in the crowd. She suddenly felt like an omniscient god who could explain everything to the people around her who were too stupid to understand the situation. Let her pass. At this moment, a special forces soldier ran over like a gust of wind. This special forces soldier was the one who apologized to Yunjian in the factory not long ago. When he saw Yunjian leave, he felt that he had to apologize. After all, she saved all of their lives, so he chased after her. But who knew that Yunjian would run so fast? He almost ran out of breath. Only then did he catch up with her. "I'm Zhang Weiguo, a member of the Flying Tiger Special Police Force. The time bomb has been successfully removed, and it was this young lady who removed it. So, let her go." Special Forces Zhang Weiguo shouted at the Special Forces soldiers as he ran. Zhang Weiguo's words were meant to help Yunjian and help her get past the Special Forces. However, what he didn't know was that his words made everyone present dumbfounded. What the hell? The bomb was actually defused by this little girl? What about the bomb disposal experts? A young girl deactivated the time bomb. Is this realistic? Not to mention the ordinary people, even the special forces were completely dumbfounded. Yunjian was already standing in front of the residential building. She didn't seem to care about the shocked gazes around her. Instead, she stood in front of the special forces soldier who had kindly stopped her and asked him, "Do you have the grappling hook?" After knowing that Yunjian was the one who removed the bomb, the special forces soldier was dumbfounded. He didn't react to Yunjian's question at all and just replied in confusion, "Yes." As he spoke, he took it out from his backpack. Yunjian took the grappling hook and nimbly walked towards the residential building. Everyone knew that the family that was held hostage was on the 6th floor. Looking at Yunjian's actions, was she going to use the grappling hook to climb up? Could she climb up? That was the 6th floor. Without any safety measures, how could she climb up with just a grappling hook? Chapter 294. While everyone was still in shock, they saw Yunjian fling her flying claws and leaping onto the wall. Then, she used the power of the flying claws to hook onto the floor. Her petite and agile figure followed closely and hung in the air. It was as if she had a pair of eyes under her feet. She stepped on the uneven spots of the residential building agilely. After a while, everyone only saw a flash before their eyes. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Yunjian had already climbed onto the wall of the residential building and arrived at the window on the 6th floor. The sight of Yunjian standing by the window without any protection sent shivers down the spines of idlers who were standing afar. What would he do if he accidentally fell? As for the special forces below, they were glaring at Yunjian who was above them. God knows how many ways they had thought of sneaking into the residential building to rescue the hostage. It wasn't that no one had thought of using the flying claws to climb up to the 6th floor from the 1st floor. But no one dared to do it. Because no matter how good their physical fitness was, no one could climb up to the 6th floor using only the flying claws. Unless they had more weapons and equipment. The special forces that had sneaked in by other means had yet to return. This result implied that the special forces that had sneaked up were most likely caught by the enemy. At this moment, Yun Jian had already flipped over and snuck into the window on the 6th floor that she had opened. She went up, she really went up. That young lady really snuck in. The crowd exclaimed. At this moment, the special forces surrounding the residential building began to move. After Yun Jian had snuck into the window on the 6th floor, a team of special forces ran up the stairs quietly all the way to the 6th floor. At this moment, Yun Jian, who had flipped over the window on the 6th floor, reassessed her surroundings. She saw a bed with a huge wedding photo hanging at the head of the bed. It must be the head of the household. It was obvious that this was the bedroom. The person who had kidnapped this family and planted the Wuxia mercenaries' unique AK-4 time bomb in the factory was in the living room outside the bedroom. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. Her footsteps were light and graceful, and she did not make a single sound. She came to the door of the bedroom, held the doorknob with her right hand, and flipped her left hand. She was ready to use a knife in case of an emergency. Yun Jian opened the door without making a sound. As soon as she opened the door, she took 2 steps forward. The sound of Yun Jian opening the door startled the criminals and hostages in the living room. Yun Jian seemed to have found the right position. The blade in her hand flew out at the same time. TSK TSK TSK. The sound of the blade piercing into the skin was bone-chilling. Before Yun Jian could see the appearance of the criminal, she had already found his position and launched the flying knife. And that criminal's skills were not weak either. The criminal rolled away at lightning speed, dodging Yun Jian's flying daggers, but he still suffered some injuries. It was only then that Yun Jian realized the situation. The criminal was also sizing up the little girl who could sneak in without him noticing. Yun Jian realized that there were a few hostages tied up by the criminal. A man and a woman should be the owners of this unit, while a few men dressed like special forces were tied up beside them. Their mouths were covered with black tape. There was no doubt that the men dressed as special forces were sent by the underlings to investigate the situation. In the end, they did not expect to be caught by the criminals and tied up as well. What surprised Yun Jian was not this, but the fact that the criminal was a member of the Wuxia mercenaries. He was even a higher-up in the mercenary group. In spite of it, this person was Yun Jian's enemy. This person's codename was Hound, the subordinate of the previous boss of the Wuxia mercenaries. He currently occupied a position in the Wuxia mercenaries. There must be a reason why this person would come to Longmen City. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes, her gaze dimming. Then, she narrowed her eyes again, a glint flashing across her eyes. No matter what the reason was, he had set off Wuxia mercenaries' unique bombs outside and almost caused a riot. He had violated the Wuxia mercenaries' rule. No one was allowed to cause trouble in the name of Wuxia mercenaries. It was obvious that Hound had violated this rule. Therefore, she, Yun Jian, was going to clean house today. Chapter 295. Jia. Hound, who had been grazed by Yun Jian's flying dagger, squinted his eyes at Yun Jian. At the same time, he let out a sinister laugh. Just this laugh alone was enough to make one's hair stand on end. Among everyone present, other than Yun Jian, the tied-up man and woman, as well as the special forces soldiers who had infiltrated and were caught, had their mouths covered with black tape. Hound was considered the second in command of the Wuxia mercenaries. For him to be able to sit in the upper echelon of the Wuxia mercenaries, his identity and status were naturally not weak. Yun Jian's red lips curled up as she looked at Hound. The two of them looked at each other, neither making the first move. Yun Jian did not make the first move because she knew that Hound was not weak. If she still had her physique from her previous life, she would naturally be able to defeat Hound in seconds. However, it was unrealistic for her to kill Hound in seconds now. Although Hound was not ranked on the international assassin ranking, compared to Wolf Blade, who had been killed by Yun Jian in seconds, Hound was many times more powerful than Wolf Blade. Just as Yun Jian and Hound were looking at each other to see through each other's abilities, the Special Forces soldiers who were tied up on the ground and had their mouths covered with black tape widened their eyes. When they had infiltrated this place, they had fought with Hound. Naturally, they knew how terrifying Hound's abilities were. However, just now when Yun Jian had infiltrated the place, the flying dagger she had thrown could graze Hound. This meant that this little girl's abilities were definitely not ordinary. Even when compared to the sturdy Hound in front of him, he was not inferior at all. Of course, these Special Forces soldiers did not know that if Yun Jian recovered her physique from her previous life, Hound's skills would be like trash. He would be killed in seconds. Before a battle between experts, it was a test of mental fortitude. Yun Jian's mental fortitude had always been very good. She stood on the spot and looked at Hound as if she was ready to fight at any time. She slightly curled the corners of her lips and maintained this posture. In the end, it was the Hound who couldn't help but speak first. He smiled sinisterly, and the scar on his face was very frightening. "You're not with the police," Hound said with certainty. At the same time, he looked at Yun Jian with an evil grin. After that, Hound paused for a moment, then laughed arrogantly. The capabilities of this group of special forces are simply too weak. This was mockery and contempt. As soon as Hound finished speaking, the special forces soldiers who were tied up on the ground and had their mouths covered started making muffled sounds. However, this was only enough to make them roll on the ground a few times. Hound's words were meant to distract Yun Jian. If Yun Jian was an ordinary person, she would have already fallen into the trap. Unfortunately, she wasn't. Ha! Yun Jian's lips curled into a smile. However, just as Yun Jian finished sneering, the door of this unit was pushed in from the outside. Then, a large group of Special Forces soldiers who were waiting downstairs rushed in. Even the Special Forces soldier who kindly told Yun Jian not to come over was among this group of people. They obviously saw that the time was ripe, so they rushed in to capture the hostage. Tsk tisk. The group of people quickly surrounded Hound. However, Hound was not afraid at all. He then sneered at the Special Forces soldiers and said bluntly, "You Special Forces soldiers from Country Z are just so. Haha, in the end, you still have to rely on a little girl to rush in here." Such provocative words infuriated the group of Special Forces soldiers even more. F*ck your mother. Someone from the Special Forces immediately cursed at Hound in a low voice. Yun Jian lowered her eyes. She raised her head slightly. That half-smile on her small face revealed a hint of viciousness. She looked at Hound and said directly, using the name of Wuxia mercenaries to cause trouble everywhere. "Hound, don't you know the rules of the organization?" Just as Hound gained the upper hand, Yun Jian's sudden voice made everyone's eyelids twitch. Chapter 296. This little girl actually knew his codename. And she even knew the rules of the Wuxia mercenaries. Hound was stunned for a moment. As for the other Special Forces soldiers, they were all stunned. They were stunned, but not because of what Yun Jian said. It was because what Yun Jian said just now was not in Chinese. She spoke to Hound in Hindi. This group of Special Forces soldiers did not understand Hindi, but they were stunned because Yun Jian, a young girl, actually knew how to speak another country's language. And judging from her accent, she seemed to be speaking Hindi. After Hound recovered from his shock, he suddenly put away his ferocious expression and his face became serious. He looked at Yun Jian with a murderous look in his eyes. He asked again, "Who are you?" "You don't deserve to know who I am." Yun Jian replied in Chinese this time, and her arrogant words shocked Hound and the other Special Forces soldiers again. Although Hound was a high-ranking member of the Wuxia mercenaries, his position was not the highest. He could occupy a position in the Wuxia mercenaries, but he could not become the eagle of the generation. At least, even if Yun Jian killed him today, the Wuxia mercenaries would not be affected at all. Damn it! Hound was not a person who acted rashly, but he was a person who could not stand provocation. This could be seen from the fact that he could not hold back and spoke first when he met Yun Jian's eyes just now. Yun Jian's arrogant words just now infuriated Hound even more. Yun Jian's expression did not change at all, but no one noticed that her lips were slightly curled. Hound's weakness was that he looked down on the weak. Moreover, he could not keep his cool and was easily provoked into anger. As expected, Yun Jian's words to Hound in Hindi had already made Hound restless. Hound kept guessing Yun Jian's identity in his heart. However, the contemptuous words just now had completely ignited Hound's anger. "I don't deserve to know. You're courting death." Hound let out a low growl. After saying that, he raised his hand and clenched his fist. His fist was tight, and his huge and powerful fist made people tremble in fear. He clenched his fist and swung it at Yun Jian. "Be careful." Seeing this, the group of Special Forces soldiers couldn't help but gasp and shout at Yun Jian. Yun Jian, on the other hand, stood upright in the same spot. Her long hair fluttered in the windless room due to the force of Hound's punch. Under the watchful eyes of the owners of the house, the man and woman, as well as all the Special Forces soldiers, Yun Jian spread out her arms. She leaned back and bent down to dodge Hound's punch from the side. Yun Jian's dodging was already dazzling to the eyes. Her speed was beyond compare. However, this was not the reason why he was shocked. Yun Jian exerted force on her feet and her petite body flipped to the left. She had already retreated behind Hound. Hound didn't expect Yun Jian to be so agile. He frowned and the irritation in his heart intensified. If he didn't kill this little girl who spouted nonsense and even said, "You don't deserve to know who I am," he would write his name in reverse. Anger and fury intertwined in Hound's heart. It was just that the difference between fast and slow was only an instant. In the next second, Yun Jian's arm was like a coiling snake's body. She curled around Hound's arm. Then, a scene unfolded before everyone's eyes. They saw Yun Jian grab Hound's arm. She suddenly used a lot of strength and directly pulled Hound's arm. She lifted Hound up and threw him to the ground with his back facing up. This move was so fast that no one could see it clearly. Hound didn't even have time to turn around. However, they saw Yun Jian on the other side reach out her fair hands and grab Hound's spine before he landed on the ground. Crack! A crisp and horrifying sound was heard. With a bang, the Hound fell to the ground, no longer making a sound. Twisting the spine that supported a person's body would cause a person to die instantly. And this method was the usual method used by the assassins and female secret agents in the movie. Chapter 297. Murder. Yun Jian had killed Hound. The man and woman, who were the owners of the house, fainted on the spot when they saw this scene. They had not fainted when they were kidnapped by Hound, but now they had fainted. Compared to the man and woman, the group of Special Forces soldiers had at least been exposed to this kind of thing before. In spite of it, Yun Jian, a young girl, had killed Hound in front of everyone. This was beyond their expectations. Firstly, it was because of her skills. Secondly, she did not show the slightest bit of fear after killing someone. Was she really as simple as her appearance made her out to be? At this moment, Yun Jian had already walked towards the group of stunned Special Forces soldiers. She stood in front of them with Hound's corpse behind her. She did not show the slightest bit of fear after killing someone. Instead, she looked at the group of Special Forces soldiers and said, "Let me introduce myself. I'm Yun Jian, codenamed Killer God. I'm a new Special Forces soldier under Gu Junjian." There was no need to hide these things. This group of Special Forces soldiers in front of her were all from the regular army. At the same time, they were on Gu Junjian's side. Yun Jian, Chu Ning, and the rest were the new talents of the younger generation that Gu Junjian had discovered. Hence, they were selected to join the Special Forces training camp as candidates. The successful completion of the previous mission also made Yun Jian and the rest official Special Forces soldiers. However, as of now, they were not from the regular army. This group of Special Forces soldiers in front of her had undergone even more brutal training. They were talents who had been carefully selected. They were members of the Special Forces like Gu Junjian. Actually, there was not much difference. In short, Yun Jian and the rest were new recruits, while this group of Special Forces soldiers in front of her were veterans. After Yun Jian finished her self-introduction, the group of Special Forces soldiers in front of her were obviously stunned. Naturally, they did not expect Yun Jian to be a member of the Special Forces. Not long after, someone immediately shouted, "You're the girl under Gu Junjian, codenamed Killer God." A tall and lean Special Forces soldier pointed at Yun Jian and exclaimed. This tall and lean Special Forces soldier was called Zhou Datu. When Zhou Datu exclaimed, everyone's gaze turned to Yun Jian. "You know me?" Yun Jian raised her eyebrows and asked. Under the watchful eyes of the Special Forces, Zhou Datu looked at Yun Jian excitedly and said, "That's right. Yes. Last time, the mission sent by the higher-ups was very difficult. Even the experienced veteran Special Forces soldiers couldn't complete it. In the end, this mission was taken over by Officer Gu. I heard that in the end, it was led by a young lady with the codename Killing God. She completed the mission in just half a day." "That little girl is you, right?" Zhou Datu looked at Yun Jian excitedly, waiting for her reply. Of course, all of the Special Forces soldiers present heard of course. It was said that the mission was accepted by a group of new recruits, and they completed it successfully in the end. However, they didn't know who the new candidates were. According to Zhou Datu, the previous mission with such difficulty was actually completed by this Yun Jian in front of them. Everyone could not help but be shocked by this. However, looking at the scene, Yun Jian alone killed hound that so many of them could not handle. Just based on this point alone. Chapter 298. Yes, it's me. Yun Jian's voice was calm, no one could tell whether she was happy or sad. In spite of it, her answer stirred the crowd. "I'm leaving now." It was only then that Yun Jian recalled that she had come out to defuse the time bomb and had been out for so long. Her brother should be worried, right? Oh. Zhou Datu replied to Yun Jian on behalf of his brother at once. Yun Jian then lifted her feet and left the place. The people here didn't stop him. Yun Jian did not introduce herself just now to leave her name. She had killed someone in public after all. Even if Hound was a member of the Kosha mercenaries in her past life, she had to be registered at the police station for murder according to Country Z's law. The main reason she had introduced herself was that she was unwilling to go to the police station. Her brother, Yun Yi, was still waiting for her to return safely. If she returned later, her brother would probably be worried. As for Hound, his death would not cause much of a stir. After all, death was a common occurrence in this line of work. Just like how Yun Jian was accidentally reborn into this body in her past life, it had been a long time since she appeared in public as the ace of secret agents, slaying God. It did not mean anything though. Even if she died, it would only cause a stir for a while before she disappeared. Times were changing, especially when it came to the assassin and secret agent ranking. The ranking could be changed at any time. Just like the death of Wolf Blade, who ranked 10th in the assassin ranking, once his death was confirmed, the 10th place would naturally be replaced by someone behind him. The dominant position and identity would only last for a moment. Yun Jian had always left when she wanted to. Someone would take care of the aftermath at the scene. It was not something Yun Jian had to consider anymore. When Yun Jian walked back and saw Yun Yi and others at the side gate of DE High School that was far away from the factory, she went up to them. Xiao Jian. Yun Yi had been worried about his sister. He had been waiting here for a long time, but he didn't hear the explosion of the bomb at the factory. He gradually calmed down. Now that Yun Jian had returned, he was even more relieved. Master. Zhang Xiaofan ran over with Chen Sini and Ling Yichen. The moment they saw Yun Jian, they felt relieved. Zhang Xiaofan returned to his original appearance. His attitude towards Yun Jian was also somewhat sarcastic. Master, what did you do when you went back just now? Did he go to defuse that ticking time bomb? Heh, don't tell me you're really going to defuse a time bomb. Zhang Xiaofan was actually just joking. However, Yun Jian had just run back, which was indeed very puzzling. Yun Jian did not reply. Just when they thought that she would stay silent, Yun Jian suddenly smiled with her eyes squinted. Her lips curled up as she replied, yes. With that, Yun Jian turned and led the way forward. Since something like this had happened in the school, the students who had escaped had naturally gone home. How would they dare to stay in school? Yun Jian's reply, however, stunned Zhang Xiaofan and the others. Yun Jian had never spoken empty words. Since she had replied to Zhang Xiaofan's half-joking and half-serious question, she had actually said, yes? Had she really gone to defuse a ticking time bomb? When Zhang Xiaofan and the others came to their senses, they ran with exaggerated steps to catch up with Yun Jian. Hey, master, wait for me. Chapter 299. Because of this incident, the New Year's literary performance organized jointly by First High School and Longmen First High School did not go well. But overall, it went quite smoothly. Of course, no one would have expected this to happen. And Yun Jian had a few days of normal life. However, Yun Jian was not idle these days because Snake Lizard had sent her another message not long ago. Those old fellows in the Wuxia mercenaries could no longer sit still this time and were planning something on a large scale. Moreover, Yun Jian, the real boss of the Wuxia mercenaries, had not appeared for a long time. Those old fellows were probably going to revolt. When Yun Jian heard this news, she only narrowed her eyes slightly and then let Snake Lizard continue to keep an eye on those old fellows. And it seemed like she had to make a trip back to the Wuxia mercenaries' headquarters. Some things had to be settled as soon as possible. Those old fellows could no longer sit still, and so could she. After sitting in the top positions for so many years, it was time for those old fellows to change their positions. This week, Yun Jian had just returned home from the military training camp. When she opened the door, she saw Ce, who had disappeared a lot. Her eyelids twitched. She had not seen him for a long time, and sometimes she even wondered where he was. But when she opened the door and saw the person she was thinking about standing in front of the door, Yun Jian was still shocked. But her expression was still very calm, and no one could tell what she was thinking. Why are you back? Yun Jian tried to look normal. She felt that she had not seen him for a long time. Why can't I come back? Ce's handsome face came close to Yun Jian. He stood in front of the door, his long legs pressed against the wall, and his sharp eyes looked at Yun Jian. In the next second, he came forward, and his delicate face was less than 5 centimeters away from Yun Jian. What are you doing? Yun Jian took 2 steps back. She was about to step out of the door when Ce suddenly grabbed her wrist. Her cheeks were slightly red, but her beautiful black eyes were darting left and right. Ce looked at her, his breath just inches away from hers. The man's magnetic and pleasant voice came from the front. Don't you want to know where I've been these days? Where you go has nothing to do with me. Yun Jian answered without even thinking. Then, she desperately shook her wrists, only to find that his grip was shockingly strong. Boom! Ce stared at Yun Jian with his beautiful eyes. He stretched out his long legs and kicked the door shut. He grabbed Yun Jian's wrist with one hand and wrapped his other hand around Yun Jian's slender waist, pressing her against the door. Are you crazy? Yun Jian didn't know what was going on. She struggled for a while and her face was already rosy. Her small lips opened and closed, which was especially alluring in Siyi's eyes. He followed his own path and directly covered Yunjian's seductive small mouth. Yunjian could only feel her lips being pressed against his icy lips. She was extremely shy, but her body didn't have the urge to push him away. Just as Ce was engrossed in kissing her seductive small mouth and pressing her against the door suddenly opened with a click. Then, there was the sound of the door being pushed open. It was just that since Ce had pressed Yunjian against the door, the person at the door could not enter even if they turned the lock. Chapter 300. Qin Yiru would never have dreamt that the reason she could not open the door was because there were two people standing inside. Yunjian was pressed against the door by Ce, who was kissing her forcefully. No matter how brave Yunjian was, it was her first time doing something like this when she heard that Qin Yiru was at the door. She nudged Ce, signaling for him to go upstairs quickly. Ce leaned in with a grin. Taking advantage of the fact that Qin Yiru was at the door and she could not scream, he planted a soft kiss on Yunjian's cheek. His lips were cold, causing Yunjian's cheeks to flush instantly. Finally, Ce went upstairs to his room under Yunjian's push. Yunjian did not continue to block the door that Qin Yiru was pushing. Instead, she reached out to open the door for Qin Yiru. Qin Yiru happened to be outside the door. She was shocked when she saw Yunjian suddenly appearing in front of her. "Xiao Jian, why are you standing at the door?" Qin Yiru asked casually. "The door isn't working, so I came downstairs to open it," Yunjian answered without looking at Qin Yiru with a sideways glance. "Oh." Qin Yiru believed her and came in with a bag of vegetables and some ingredients. Just as she entered, she saw Yunjian's flushed cheeks. Worried that her daughter was sick, Qin Yiru ran over to touch Yunjian's forehead, mumbling, "Xiao Jian, why is your face so red? Are you having a fever? Come here and let Mom touch your forehead to feel your temperature." "Mom, I'm fine. It's just a little hot in the room," Yunjian explained with a blush and found an excuse to go upstairs after that. Qin Yiru did not suspect anything as she went to prepare dinner happily. To Qin Yiru, her current life was nothing bad. Her son was outstanding and so was her daughter. Her job was going smoothly and there were no more worries like before. Qin Yiru was genuinely happy now. Just as Yunjian went up to the second floor, she was pulled aside by Ce. Don't do that." Yunjian was like a little girl, afraid that Ce would do something weird to her just now, so she quickly spoke up. She did not hate what Ce did to her just now. Instead, she looked forward to it. She did not know what was wrong with her. Why was she behaving like an ignorant young girl with her heart racing? Seeing Yunjian's reaction, Ce pressed his lips together and chuckled. I'm talking about something serious," he said. Did this mean that he would not do what he did to her just now? Yunjian breathed a sigh of relief and pressed her lips together, swaying them in front of Ce's eyes. "Go on," Yunjian said. "Kosha mercenaries. Do you need my help?" Ce's starry eyes were fixed on Yunjian, who stood not far away from him. Her petite figure made his heart itch constantly. Yunjian's eyelids twitched when she heard Ce mention Kosha mercenaries. Especially the meaning behind his words. She had never told Ce that she was the boss of Kosha mercenaries, but why did Ce sound as though he knew everything? "What do you know?" Yunjian furrowed her brows, her pretty little face frowning. Ce imprinted her furrowed brows in his heart. He could not help but reach out to touch her little face and say something that made Yunjian extremely shocked. "Nothing that I want to know can escape my eyes. I know everything about you." His words were very ambiguous, but it made Yunjian's eyelids twitch. He knew everything. He knew everything about her. How far did he know? He knew that she was the boss of Kosha mercenaries. Chapter 301. Looking at Yunjian's face contorted when her secret was exposed, Ce could not help but pull her close to him. He thought this way, and he really did it. Ce pulled Yunjian into his arms. The girl's milky scent wafted into his nostrils, mixing with her slight body scent. Ce pursed his lips into a smile. Yunjian nudged Ce. Since Qin Yiru was cooking downstairs, she did not dare to make too much noise, so she could only bury herself in his body. Fortunately, she did not dislike the scent on his body. It was a faint, warm feeling with a hint of sweetness, like bee candy. Hugging the girl's petite frame, Ce did not ask any more questions. At this moment, nothing was more important to him than her. Ce only let go of Yunjian when Qin Yiru finished cooking dinner. During dinner, Ce sat close to Yunjian. Eat more. This fish is fresh. We just bought it from the market. Eat more. During dinner, Qin Yiru even picked up food for Ce. In the end, she could not reach Ce and Yunjian, so she had to let Yunjian help Ce. Yunjian blushed slightly. Every bit of food she picked up for Ce was swallowed by him without hesitation. Even when Yunjian purposely picked up a few extra pieces of fatty meat for him, he swallowed them all without a hint of disdain. This made Yunjian feel helpless. On Saturday morning, Yunjian woke up before the sun rose. Ce was already waiting for her at the door. For the past few days, whenever Yunjian went out for a morning run, Ce would always tag along. Today was no exception. Because it was the weekend, Yunyi happened to come home this weekend. Early in the morning, Yunjian tied her hair into a high ponytail and was full of energy. Yunyi also woke up early today. Usually, Yunyi would sleep until 9 in the morning. Today, Yunyi woke up before 5 o'clock. At this moment, Yunjian was still tying her shoelaces on the first floor. Ce was standing beside her, staring straight at her. "Brother, where are you going so early today?" Yunjian felt strange and asked aloud. "Today is our class reunion." Yunyi put on a pair of clean white shoes and walked out. He turned to bid farewell to Yunjian and Ce and left. Yunjian narrowed her eyes. After tying her shoelaces, she stood up and stretched before going out for a morning run. Ce kept following her. There were not many people who went out for a morning run in the morning. Most of the people who went out for a morning run were elderly men or women. It was rare for young people like Yunjian and Ce to go out early in the morning to exercise. After walking past a park and passing by a pavilion, Yunjian sat down to rest for a while. Ce was afraid that she would be thirsty, so he ran to a small shop nearby to buy her a bottle of mineral water. The two of them sat down in front of a small pavilion that was used to cool off in the summer. Behind the small pavilion were a few large trees. Behind the trees was a public toilet built from a low hut. At this moment, a few girls were standing in front of the toilet. The girls were talking very softly, but Yunjian could still hear them. Originally, Yunjian was not interested in what they were talking about. However, as the girls were talking, they suddenly mentioned a name that caught Yunjian's attention. "Hey, did you guys know? Chen Yubing from the 3rd class is going to do something big tonight." "What do you mean, something big?" Heh, she only told me about this. You guys better not spread it out. It's that senior Yunyi from the 1st year of high school, do you guys know him? Hehe, Chen Yubing likes that senior Yunyi, but he doesn't seem to be interested in her. So tonight, Chen Yubing seems to be planning to give herself to him. She's thinking that what's done can't be undone. When the time comes, she won't have to be afraid that he won't admit it. Otherwise, she'll go to his house. Is this for real? Chapter 302. Yunjian was just resting with Ce in the pavilion, but she didn't expect to hear her brother's name. And Chen Yubing's name. Chen Yubing was planning to offer herself? What's done can't be undone. That meant she was planning to hit on her brother. Yunjian suddenly realized that her brother had woken up so early today to attend a class reunion. Since it was a class reunion, would Chen Yubing be there too? If that was the case, then it made sense. Chen Yubing was planning to take advantage of the class reunion to make a move on Yun-yi. Hehe, of course it's true. I even heard that a few classes are attending this class reunion. Chen Yubing was the one who organized it. Although it sounds like a class reunion, it's actually Chen Yubing's scheme to trick senior Yun-yi. The two girls didn't realize that someone had overheard their conversation. On the contrary, since there was no one around them, they didn't try to cover up their conversation as much as before. Will senior Yun-yi be there? The other girl asked curiously. Of course. The girl who had been bragging became even more enthusiastic. It was as if she wanted to tell the other girl everything she knew. Chen Yubing is really something. Although she's not in the same class as Yun-yi, she knows people in her class. She secretly asked her classmates to invite all the students to the reunion. She didn't let anyone know that she was the one who organized it. Then won't senior Yun-yi be tricked? The other girl interrupted. That's right. After the two girls finished whispering and walked away hand in hand, Yun Jian, who was standing in front of the washroom where the two girls had been, finally revealed a trace of ruthlessness. She pursed her lips and a shrewd look flashed across her eyes. Ce, who was standing at the side, placed his hands lazily in his pockets. A trace of viciousness flashed across his handsome face. She dared to touch his brother-in-law, that woman called Chen something Bing? Was she looking for death? If Yun Jian could hear Ce's thoughts, she would definitely not be able to hold back her sarcasm. When did her brother become his brother-in-law? Are you going back? Yun Jian turned around. Her beautiful and delicate little face was facing Ce, and her long eyelashes fluttered up and down. The meaning of her words was very obvious. Of course, she couldn't leave Yun-yi alone. She was asking him if he wanted to go with her. I'll go with you. Ce turned his handsome body to the side. He lowered his head to look at the girl who was a head shorter than him and smiled brightly. Oh. Yun Jian nodded and said, let's go home now. You drive. Yun-yi had been out for some time. If Chen Yubing was really prepared, she should still be able to make it in time if she rushed over now. Although the two girls had said that Chen Yubing was planning to give herself to Yun-yi at night, Yun Jian felt that with Chen Yubing's personality, as long as Chen Yubing fell for her trap, Chen Yubing would immediately make her move. Yun Jian's guess was right. Chen Yubing was indeed planning to make her move when she had her way. At this moment, Yun-yi was already singing with her classmates at a karaoke bar. They had been having a gathering for some time. Although there were also classmates from other classes, such as Chen Yubing, he didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. Chapter 303. The moment they heard that they were going to play a game, the group of students who were already tired from singing karaoke immediately perked up. Zhu, what game are we playing? A boy asked the girl who suggested the game earlier. The girl called Zhu, who wasn't particularly pretty, replied to the boy. Following that, Zhu glanced at Chen Yubing, who was sitting quietly not too far away, but was extremely agitated. Finally, she said to everyone, don't worry, I'll decide on the rules of the game. Don't worry, I guarantee that it'll be fair, fun, and exciting. Zhu was Yun-yi's classmate. At the same time, everyone thought that Zhu was the one who organized the party. In fact, Zhu was a girl who was bought over by Chen Yubing. After she was bought over by Chen Yubing, she immediately helped Chen Yubing. For example, when Chen Yubing wanted to organize the party, Zhu stood out and made everyone think that she was the one who organized the party. Seeing that Zhu was following her plan step by step, Chen Yubing, who was hiding in the corner, couldn't help but smile. Yun-yi said that he didn't like her. Then she would make him have no choice but to like her. So what if he didn't like her? Once they were done, even if Yunyi didn't like her, he would have to take responsibility for her. At that time, even if his powerful sister, Yun Jian, wanted to do anything, it would be nonsense. Moreover, she, Chen Yubing, had already planned everything out. Even Yunyi's mother, Qin Yiru, would be invited to the party after she and Yunyi were done. This way, she wouldn't have to worry that Yunyi would deny it. Zhu Zhu was a girl who knew how to talk. Although she didn't look very good, she quickly moved the crowd. Everyone has to participate. We're a team. With Zhu Zhu's words, Yunyi, who didn't want to participate in the game, was also urged by the other boys in the class to participate. Su Haokol didn't come today because he had something to do. As a good friend, Yunyi naturally understood. Yunyi was a little against this kind of game, but under the boys' urging, she still participated. The game that Zhu Zhu was talking about was actually very simple. Everyone would sit together in a circle, and in the circle, there would be a turntable. The turntable would be turned by Zhu Zhu, and in the end, whoever the turntable turned to would have to draw lots. This lot was drawn from a pile of folded paper. The punishment was written on the paper. Generally speaking, whoever the wheel reached would have to draw a piece of paper from the pile of paper with the punishment written on it. If it was blank, it meant that he would not be punished. However, if the punishment was written on the paper, he would have to follow the instructions written on the paper. Zhu Zhu was an old hand at manipulating the abacus. She deliberately manipulated a few people, and in the end, the abacus fell on Yunyi. Then, she drew lots for Yunyi. She had switched these pieces of paper with the same content written on them. When Yunyi opened the paper, she saw the words written on it: "Drink a glass of special wine." Wow! At this moment, everyone saw it and shouted. Because this glass of special wine was made by mixing all kinds of fruit juice and all kinds of wine together. It was a dark cuisine of fruit juice and wine. It tasted terrible, but it was also the highlight of this game. Whoever was unlucky enough to be pointed by the turntable and draw this piece of paper would have to drink this terrible glass of wine. Drink it! Drink it! Drink it! Yunyi was unlucky enough to fall for it. Everyone followed suit. Everyone wanted to see a good show, so they shouted even louder. Helpless, Yunyi could only pick up the glass of fruit juice and wine and drink it in one gulp. There was a burning sensation, and the smell was extremely unpleasant. However, because of this, Yunyi didn't notice the unusual taste in this glass of wine. Chapter 304. Yunyi felt a little dizzy after downing the cup of specially made wine. He wasn't used to drinking, but because this was a group game, he drank it down. Zhu Zhu kept the game going, and Yunyi didn't get turned. Chen Yubing, who was sitting opposite Yunyi, kept staring at him with a burning gaze. "Hey, Yunyi, you don't look so good. Why don't I send you home first?" Just then, a boy suddenly spoke up. This boy was actually someone who had been bribed by Chen Yubing. His name was Xiaofan, and he was Yunyi's classmate. In this era, people who weren't particularly rich, especially students who were studying in school, were easily bewitched by money. Chen Yubing was smart enough to take advantage of this. "Yeah, Xiaofan, send him home first. Don't let anything happen to him." Zhu Zhu pretended that she didn't know anything. She blinked and gave Zhao Yishan a look. When Zhao Yishan saw this, he didn't care whether Yunyi answered him or not. He walked over to support Yunyi and left. Yunyi's tall body was supported by Zhao Yishan, who was thinner and weaker than him. Yunyi felt that his throat was very dry. His eyes were a little dazed, and his body was a little hot. He was supported by Zhao Yishan and left the place. Zhao Yishan supported Yunyi and walked out. He gestured to Chen Yubing twice, meaning that he was going to take him to the place they had planned. Come, come, come. Let's continue playing. Zhu Zhu tilted her head and saw Yun Yi being supported by Xiaofan as they walked out. She revealed a big smile. She could almost see the reward Chen Yubing would give her after the game was over. The other students didn't notice Yun Yi's abnormality. After all, everyone was in high spirits at this time, so they started a new round of the game. Not long after, Chen Yubing also found an excuse and left. Yun Jian and Ce ran home on foot. Ce started the Lamborghini and drove straight to the karaoke bar. Fortunately, Yun Yi had told her the address of the karaoke bar they went to in the morning. Therefore, Yun Jian did not need to check and went straight to that place. It was one of the few karaoke bars in Longmen City. The KTV of this era was called karaoke. It was a place for serious singing, but at the same time, it was also a place where crooks mixed in with honest folks. After checking the address of the private room at the front desk, Yun Jian went straight there. Outside the K-18 private room. Yun Jian had already found out that the private room Yun Yi and the others had booked was this K-18. She walked side by side with Ce. As she was closer to the door of the private room, she lifted her leg and kicked it open. Bang! The sharp eyes of the group of people who were playing with the roulette behind the door jumped for a while. Who's there? Facing Yun Jian, who had suddenly kicked the door open, the group was startled. Just as they focused, they saw Yun Jian and Ce walking in side by side. Hey, isn't this Yun Yi's younger sister? Someone recognized Yun Jian and asked. Hearing that it was Yun Yi's younger sister, Zhu Zhu, who had just done something wrong, dodged guiltily. Yun Jian caught Zhu Zhu's evasive gaze and looked around. Seeing that her brother was not in the room, she lowered her gaze and asked, "Where's my brother?" I think Xiaofan sent him home. Your brother doesn't seem to be feeling well. Someone answered at once. Not feeling well? Yun Jian scoffed and strode to Zhu Zhu. Reaching out, her cold fingers grabbed Zhu Zhu's throat. Chapter 305. Everyone's eyes widened in shock when they saw Yun Jian barging in and going over to strangle Zhu Zhu's throat without a word. Among them, some of Yun Yi's classmates had seen Yun Jian before and knew that Yun Yi had a beautiful sister. In the past, they only thought of Yun Jian as a weak girl, the type who should be protected under the wings of a boy. But until just now, everyone's understanding of Yun Jian had been overturned. She actually choked Zhu Zhu's throat the moment she walked in. What was going on? Ah! At this moment, Zhu Zhu, who was choked by Yun Jian, made two sounds. She looked in panic at the girl who was choking her and her face froze. This girl was Yun Yi's sister. Yun Yi's sister, what are you doing? Let go, you're going to kill her. Someone couldn't help but shout when they saw Yun Jian choking Zhu Zhu. Yun Jian's eyes were fixed on Zhu Zhu. She suddenly let go just as Zhu Zhu was about to suffocate. Zhu Zhu almost suffocated. She was about to cry when she finally got air again. Yun Jian looked at her coldly. She looked down at Zhu Zhu and said, "Are you going to say it or not?" Yun Jian didn't know where Yun Yi had gone after leaving this place, but when she first walked in and heard that she was Yun Yi's sister, she saw Zhu Zhu's evasive gaze clearly. Chen Yubing had a plan, but it would be difficult for her to succeed alone. So the best way was to get help. When Zhu Zhu's gaze fell on Yun Jian, even if Yun Jian wasn't here, she could tell from a person's gaze whether they had done something wrong. When Zhu Zhu heard that she was Yun Yi's sister, her evasive gaze was telling Yun Jian that Zhu Zhu was involved in Yun Yi's matter. Zhu Zhu did not seem to realize the danger she was in. Everyone, including the group, thought that Yun Jian was joking just now. Say what? Zhu Zhu almost suffocated from the choking, but she still pretended that she didn't know anything. She looked at Yun Jian innocently and even tried to turn her head to look at Ce. What a handsome man. Zhu Zhu's gaze gradually shifted from Yun Jian to Ce. Ce's handsome features looked as if they had been sculpted by God himself. His features were stunning. Some of the girls present also looked unabashedly at Ce. As for Yunjian's threat, they quickly forgot about it. Ha! Yunjian suddenly chuckled. That slight smile made one's hair stand on end. Just as Yunjian decided to use the most decisive method to force Zhu to speak, Ce suddenly reached out and patted Yunjian's shoulder, pulling her behind him. Zhu saw Ce's action and almost cried out in excitement. She thought that Ce had pulled Yunjian away because of her looks. Was he going to comfort her? But Zhu was wrong. Chapter 306. Which one of the people present wasn't a student? They were all students of the school and had grown up under the protection of their parents and teachers. Although some of the children were more willful or at this age, they were still in the rebellious phase of their youth. There were even some students who thought they were very powerful, but ultimately, they were just a bunch of people who had never seen the real world. Hence, when they saw Ce take out a gun and point it at Zhu, they were so frightened that they screamed. Ah! 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 Gun! The girls screamed continuously, their high-pitched shouts echoing together. The boys pretended to be calm, but all of them were so frightened that their faces turned pale. It was obvious that none of them were really calm. Compared to them, Ce was holding a gun and pointing it at Zhu. Zhu was still thinking that Ce had stopped Yunjian from interrogating her because he had a good impression of her. In the next second, he took out a gun and pointed it at her. Zhu knew some tricks, but she was just a girl studying in the school. When she saw the glaring muzzle between Ce's fair and slender fingers pointing at her head, she fell to the floor in fright and raised her hands in a gesture of surrender. Don't kill me. Don't kill me. I. What do you want to know? I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you everything. Zhu was paralyzed on the ground in fear. She seemed to be afraid that Ce's finger would really pull the trigger. Hence, she quickly knelt down in front of Yunjian and Ce. Do you want to know where Yuni went? I'll tell you. Don't kill me. Zhu was trembling with fear as she looked at the gun in Ce's hand. She quickly told them everything she knew. It's Chen Yubing. It's all Chen Yubing's fault. She asked me to invite everyone to a gathering and trick Yun-yi into drinking that glass of wine. That glass of wine had been spiked with a drug, and the effects are very strong. Then, he made up an excuse for Xiaofan to take Yun-yi away. Woo, I don't know anything else. Zhu was scared out of her wits. She was so scared that she spilled everything. As soon as Zhu said that, everyone present widened their eyes in shock. Something like this actually happened. Who would have thought that Xiaofan's suggestion to send Yun-yi home was for such a purpose? No one would have thought that Chen Yubing was such a woman. Where is he? Yunjian asked while Zhu was panicking. He was sent to a hotel by Xiaofan. Zhu did not dare to hide anything under the gun. Which hotel? Yunjian asked quickly. It's the one across the street, Zhu said quickly. When Yunjian heard that, she did not care about these people anymore. She turned and left. Seeing that Yunjian had left, Zhu stared at Ce's perfect face a few more times in fear. However, she had no choice but to look away because she was afraid. I've already told you. Can you let me go? I beg you, I beg you. I won't dare to do it again. Zhu almost kowtowed to Ce. Do you think you're worthy of living in this world? Ce sneered. His handsome eyebrows twitched. How could someone who wanted to harm his brother-in-law live? Just when everyone thought that Ce was just joking, Ce suddenly spoke. Chapter 307. Ah! Seeing Ce pull the trigger without hesitation, the boys and girls present screamed and covered their faces. Everyone was afraid that the scene they were imagining would happen. Zhu would be pierced by a bullet. Naturally, Zhu screamed in fright. She could feel a bullet fly past her and right in front of her. In the next second, Zhu fell to the ground with a thump. She wasn't dead, but had fainted from fright. The group of people present opened their eyes, trembling. They saw that Zhu, who had fainted on the ground, had not been hit by a bullet. There was no sign of blood loss either. Everyone also noticed that the high ponytail on Zhu's head had burst open. The bullet had brushed past Zhu's ponytail and pierced the wall behind her. There was no better marksmanship than this. Everyone was stunned. The boys were even more in awe of Ce exquisite marksmanship. When they looked up to find the shooter, Ce, they found that he had already left with Yunjian. No one knew where he had gone. On the other side, Yunyi was being supported by Xiaofan. When he was being helped out of the karaoke bar, he sensed that something was wrong. But his head was swollen and his vision was getting blurry. He had no choice but to follow Xiaofan's footsteps. "Where are we going?" Yunyi used his thumb to pinch the back of his hand so that he wouldn't be completely submerged. "Hee, brother, you'll know when we get there." Xiaofan smiled slyly. In class, Xiaofan was never someone who could get along well with others, especially Yunyi. He had never interacted with Xiaofan. Today, he was the first to say that he wanted to send him home. That alone was enough to make people suspicious. But Yunyi really didn't have the strength to escape now. But Yunyi kept pinching the back of his hand so that he could retain his last bit of consciousness. Xiaofan helped Yunyi to the hotel across the street. According to his original plan, he helped Yunyi to the hotel. Just as Xiaofan was about to push Yunyi onto the big bed in the hotel room, Yunyi suddenly turned sideways. She used the last bit of strength she had been saving and pushed Xiaofan to the ground. Yunyi, on the other hand, ran out of the room by himself. His tall body moved forward, and when he exited the hotel room, he even closed the door behind him. His tall figure walked through the corridors of the hotel rooms. Yunyi's vision became more and more blurry. He felt his body constantly emitting heat and an unknown desire. The drug that Chen Yubing had given him was very strong. It could be said that she had no intention of giving him a way out. At this time, even if Yunyi was stupid, she should know that she must have been drugged. Combined with his experience tonight, he had already guessed who the person who had drugged him was. But now was not the time to think about this. He ran all the way through the corridor. In his blurred vision, he seemed to see a door open. Xiaofan would catch up with him soon. If Yunyi hadn't been drugged, he could have taken on 3 people like Xiaofan. But at this time, Yunyi was drugged, and his body was weak and powerless. Fortunately, his body was strong. Even if he only had a little strength left, he was able to overpower Xiaofan and run out. Just then, he saw the door of a hotel room open in front of him. Yunyi ran in without thinking. Chapter 308. Swish swish swish. After the door was locked, Yunyi calmed down. He covered his chest and felt the heat in his body, but he also heard the sound of water splashing from the bathroom inside the hotel room. Water. Yunyi calmed down. His eyes were a little hazy, but he could still see the outline of the room. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva. His whole body was hot, especially in his current situation. He really needed water to relieve the heat in his body. Yunyi walked to the bathroom of the hotel room, pushed open the frosted glass door, and walked in. Clack. It was the sound of something falling out of shock. At this time, the scene in the bathroom was revealed. Yunyi's eyes were blurry, but he could still see the scene in front of him. He saw a 15 or 16-year-old girl standing naked under the shower head, washing her body. The girl's smooth skin could be seen clearly even though Yunyi's eyes were blurry. Those proud and upright twin peaks, as well as the girl's clean and white body, were presented in front of Yunyi just like that. He could vaguely see that the girl's face was very good. She looked sweet, and was the cute and delicate type. But after Yun-yi saw the scene in front of him, the girl's panicked eyes darted around like a deer. Ah! The girl screamed. She ran to the side, grabbed a bath towel with her small hand, and wrapped it around her body as fast as she could. Who are you? Hooligan. Shameless. The girl screamed and pointed at Yun-yi, spitting out 2 unsightly words. Yun-yi used his white fingers to grab the frosted glass door of the bathroom. He saw the girl's white body swaying in front of his eyes, and then quickly covered it up. He felt the heat in his body become more and more unbearable. Yun-yi's hoarse voice sounded, but it soon weakened. At this moment, the young girl standing in front of them was blushing. She carefully sized up Yun-yi and discovered that Yun-yi's face was completely red. It was obvious that she had been drugged. You were drugged? The young girl wrapped her petite body, her cute and delicate little face slightly wrinkled. She took 2 steps towards Yun-yi, then finally bit her lip, but still walked over. Are you okay? The young girl reached out her hand and touched Yun-yi's forehead. As soon as Yun-yi's skin came into contact with the girl's icy cold skin, he felt the heat in his body dissipate a little. He didn't know where he got the strength from, but he actually lost control and grabbed the girl's small hand. Ah! The girl's hand was grabbed, and in her panic, her other hand loosened. As a result, the towel that was covering her body fell to the ground. You. Stop it. I can detoxify the poison. I can detoxify the poison in your body. The young girl blinked her eyes in panic and looked at Yun-yi in horror. However, Yun-yi's eyes were already red. He pulled the girl's icy cold body over and pulled her hand into his embrace. Outside the hotel, Yun-jian and Ce rushed in together. Yun-jian was a little flustered. She was about to kick open the hotel room door one by one to search for Yun-yi, but Ce grabbed her hand and brought her to the hotel surveillance room. In the monitoring room, he tapped on the computer on Yun-jian's behalf with his long fingers and pulled up the video in no time. Yun-yi was supported by Xiao Shan to a room, but she quickly ran out, and Xiao Shan chased after her. Chapter 309. Brother escaped from that room and went into room 6011. Ce checked Yun-yi's condition on the computer and walked over to Yun-jian. Your brother? Yun-jian relaxed when she heard that Yun-yi was fine. At the same time, she heard Ce call Yun-yi brother and immediately grasped the key point. He was obviously her brother, okay? Since when did her brother become his brother? The corners of Ce's lips quirked up as he replied with squinted eyes, your brother agreed to it himself. In fact, he had accidentally revealed all his thoughts. Her brother would become his brother sooner or later. Oh, Yun-jian glanced at Ce and walked out with Ce. Yun-yi was now on the 6th floor. When Yun-yi broke free from Xiao Shan and ran to room 6011 from another room, she was actually quite a distance away and had even turned a corner. When Yun-jian and Ce arrived on the 6th floor, they saw Xiao Shan standing in front of room 6011 and trying to break down the door. Yun-yi had just been drugged and her body was weak. Fortunately, she was one step ahead of Xiao Shan and went into another room to lock the door. Xiao Shan was one step behind. He stood at the door anxiously and started to think of a way to break down the door. Yun-jian went straight to the door. This time, she didn't let Ce do it for her. Instead, she walked over and grabbed Xiao Shan's collar. She easily dragged Xiao Shan, who was much taller than her, over. How dare you hurt my brother? She glared at Xiao Shan and said through gritted teeth. I. Xiao Shan had seen Yun-jian before. He recognized her at first sight and didn't know what to say for a moment. Yun-jian scoffed and released her grip abruptly. At the same time, she extended her leg to kick Xiao Shan's stomach. Bang! Xiaofan's fat body was directly sent flying. He fell to the ground with a plop. His fat body trembled as he fainted from the impact. Yunjian didn't care. She walked to the door of room 6011 and took out a small blade. She held the blade with her fingers and spun it nimbly on the door lock. After a while, the door opened with a click. Breaking down doors was her specialty. In her previous life, she had snuck into all sorts of places to steal treasures to complete missions. Every time, she would silently unlock the door and sneak out unscathed. The moment the door opened, Yun Jian stepped in. Ci's tall figure stood by her side. When Yun Jian and Ce entered the room together, they saw two people hugging each other on the bed. To be exact, Yun Yi was the only one who had his eyes closed. The floor was littered with messy clothes. It was hard for one not to think of the wrong things when they saw such a scene. Yun Jian's eyelids twitched when she saw this scene. She saw her brother lying on the bed with a young girl who was about her age. The two of them were covered with a blanket. The young girl's cute and delicate face made people want to dote on her. Her delicate face was like a baby's face. Her beautiful face was so delicate that people couldn't take their eyes off of her. Unlike Yun Jian's delicate face, the young girl's face had a hint of childishness like a baby's, but there was an indescribable beauty to it. However, what surprised Yun Jian wasn't that the young girl was lying on the bed with her brother Yun Yi. Compared to the young girl and her brother Yun Yi hugging each other naked, the young girl's identity was even more shocking. She was Yun Jian's acquaintance. This young girl was a high-ranking member of the Wuxia mercenaries. The young girl's code name was Poison Lady. In the Wuxia mercenaries, she was originally Snake, Lizard's disciple. However, the young girl's poison skills were even worse than Snake, Lizard's. Hence, in her previous life, Yun Jian would often bring her along on missions. It could be said that other than Snake, Lizard and Tiger, Leopard, Poison Lady was Yun Jian's biggest partner. However, Poison Lady's ranking in the Wuxia mercenaries wasn't one of the top few. This could be seen from Poison Lady's code name. Poison Lady, Poison Lady. The young girl was an expert in using poison. However, other than poison, she didn't know anything else. Chapter 310. Lady Venom's identity in Wuxia mercenaries was different from Tanuki's. Tanuki, who came to give Yun Jian her beloved Ferrari LaFerrari, was different from Lady Venom. Tanuki was Snake, Lizard's subordinate, while Lady Venom was Snake, Lizard's disciple. Both Tanuki and Lady Venom had baby faces and were petite and adorable, but Lady Venom was about 10 years younger than Tanuki. More importantly, Lady Venom was not capable, but she was chosen by Snake, Lizard to be her disciple because of her skill in using poison. Lady Venom's skill in using poison was something that even Yun Jian was impressed by. Therefore, other than Snake, Lizard and Tiger, Leopard, Lady Venom was Yun Jian's right-hand man. Her skill in using poison was a great help to Yun Jian. Other than her mature-sounding code name, Lady Venom also had a nice name, Qingyu. As Yun Jian stared unblinkingly at Qingyu, Qingyu noticed Yun Jian as well. Qingyu had come to look for Yun Jian under Snake, Lizard's instruction. It could be said that she came to Longmen City to look for the boss of Wuxia mercenaries, Yun Jian. Before she came, Snake, Lizard had described Yun Jian's recent situation to her as much as possible, and she had seen Yun Jian's photo in advance. The boss of Wuxia mercenaries had become someone else. Snake, Lizard did not mention this to anyone else other than Qingyu. Qingyu came to Longmen City to look for Yun Jian because she was Snake, Lizard's disciple despite being Snake, Lizard's assistant in her past life. It was also because Qingyu was the person closest to Yun Jian in her past life that Snake, Lizard did not hide the fact that Yun Jian had been reborn as someone else. It was just that Qing Yu did not expect that she would still be so clumsy that she forgot to close the door when she showered. She did not expect a boy to barge in. A boy who was drugged. In spite of it, nothing happened between Qing Yu and Yun Yi. She hid on the bed with Yun Yi because she was helping Yun Yi with the antidote. The drug was difficult to detoxify. Yun Yi who was drugged would be doomed if there was no other woman around. However, it was different for Qing Yu who was an expert in detoxification. She could detoxify all poisons in the world. This was why she was brought by Yun Jian's side. In spite of it, Qing Yu did not expect Yun Jian to barge in when she was cooling Yun Yi with her body to detoxify him. Yun Jian was the boss of Wuxia mercenaries. Slaying, we didn't do it. Qing Yu was slaying God was slaying God was slaying God was slaying Qing was slaying God. Other than being proficient in using poison, Qing Yu was no different from an ordinary girl. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes, knowing that Qing Yu knew who she was. Snake. Lizard must have asked Qing Yu to come to Longmen City. In fact, Qing Yu was a key figure in her annihilation of Wuxia mercenaries in her past life. Other than Snake. Lizard and Tiger. Leopard's brute strength, Qing Yu's poison was colorless and tasteless. Snake. Lizard was an expert in using poison as well, but compared to Qing Yu, she was a notch weaker. Chapter 311. Yun Jian's heart was pounding as she watched the scene unfold before her. She suppressed her surprise and was too embarrassed to stay any longer when she saw that her brother, Yun Yi, had woken up. After all, she had never expected such a scene. In spite of it, she was thankful that the girl sleeping next to Yun Yi was not Chen Yubing, regardless of whether Qing Yu and Yun Yi had done anything. Otherwise, with Chen Yubing's character, she might not stop until she caused more trouble. You guys. Cough cough, we'll head out first. Come out once you're dressed. Yun Jian gave Qing Yu a look. Qing Yu was the one who had stayed the longest by Yun Jian's side in his past life. Yun Jian would usually bring her along when he went out on a mission, so Qing Yu naturally understood the meaning behind Yun Jian's look. Qing Yu nodded with a lowered head. Yun Jian then dragged Ce out. Yun Yi, who was in the room, turned over and woke up. Qing Yu's petite figure was the first thing he saw when he came back to his senses, but Yun Yi was stunned at the same time. He suddenly recalled the scene before he fainted. He had been drugged and had managed to escape. Then, he saw a door and rushed in. Later on, he even saw a slender young girl taking a bath, and he immediately hugged her. What happened after that? He could not remember what happened after that at all. Qing Yu, on the other hand, felt her eyelids twitch when Yun Yi's handsome face stared at her. Anyone with a discerning eye would be able to see what was going on in this situation. Yun Yi was not stupid. He did not know if he had done anything to the girl, but the girl was lying on the bed with him innocently. Based on this point alone, he was a bastard. I'm sorry. Yun Yi tapped his forehead with his fair, slender fingers and spat out, I'll be responsible for you. Qing Yu stared at Yun Yi blankly. She only wanted to say that nothing had happened between them. Outside the room, Yun Jian and Ce were standing in the corridor of the hotel. Yun Jian didn't look too upset. In fact, as long as Chen Yubing was not lying on Yun Yi's bed, Yun Jian would not blame herself. Not long after, Yun Yi and Qing Yu walked out of the house neatly dressed. Qing Yu's face was pinkish and rosy, looking bitter. Yun Yi wasn't any better. After all, he was an adolescent boy, and Yun Yi was not the kind of boy who would mess around. He had never held a girl's hand other than his sister's since he was young, let alone sleeping naked on the same bed with a girl. Come with me, Yun Jian said, looking at Qing Yu. Qing Yu looked up at Yun Jian and followed him. Yun Yi, on the other hand, thought that Yun Jian knew that he was sleeping with Qing Yu. He panicked at the thought of his sister's formidable skills. Xiao Jian, it's my fault. I accidentally ruined the girl's innocence. You. Don't hit the girl. Before Yunyi could finish, however, he was cut off by Yun Jian. Don't worry, I won't eat her up, Yun Jian said with a chuckle. It was normal for Yunyi to not know that she knew Qingyu. Chapter 312. When she came to a quiet corner with Yun Jian, Qingyu's tender and adorable baby face was flushed with a tinge of redness. Once they were away from Yunyi and Ce, Qingyu started to explain, "Sha, we didn't do anything." I know. Yun Jian interrupted Qingyu, pressing her lips together and changing the topic. Did you come to Longmen City to look for me? Once Yun Jian changed the topic, Qingyu did not dwell on the embarrassing incident just now. She nodded, still retaining the shyness of a young girl in her movements. Master asked me to look for you. If Yun Jian had not witnessed Qingyu's poisoning skills, she might have believed that Qingyu was just an ordinary girl. You can stay in Longmen City then, Yun Jian continued. Really? Qingyu asked in surprise. Qingyu still retained the lively and adorable attitude of a young girl. Snake. Lizard had taken Qingyu as her disciple when she was very young and had been following Yun Jian on Snake. Lizard's behalf since then. Qingyu's excellent poisoning skills had allowed her to avoid the brutal assassin or secret agent training. In spite of that, Qingyu still had the basic ability to protect herself. After all, if she could not even protect herself, Qingyu would not have the chance to stay by Yun Jian's side. She, Yun Jian, never wanted useless people by her side. You're about the same age as me now. Follow me as a student from now on, Yun Jian said to Qingyu with a nod. She usually did not have any big secrets in front of Qingyu. Qingyu, on the other hand, was one of the people who had been with her the longest, just like Snake. Lizard and Tiger. Leopard. I'm going to enroll? Qingyu pointed at herself in surprise and asked Yun Jian. That's right. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and nodded before she continued to ask Qingyu, how's the group of old things? Those old bastards were the lackeys of the previous boss of the Kosha mercenaries. Qingyu came from the Kosha mercenaries, so she must know more about these things. It was only then that Qingyu spoke. Master said that they'll be conducting a large-scale operation soon, yes. Come with me to the Kosha mercenaries in a few days, Yun Jian said. Qingyu nodded in agreement. When it came to Yun Jian's arrangement, Qingyu was just like Snake. Lizard, Tiger. Leopard. When Yun Jian and Qingyu walked out from the corner, they saw Ce and Yunyi finishing their conversation. Qingyu could not help blushing when she saw Yunyi. Brother, you guys go back first, Yun Jian said to Yunyi. Xiao Jian, you found me so quickly. Do you know who drugged me? Yunyi spoke through gritted teeth. Of course, he hated the person who drugged her. If it were not for that person, he would not have allowed the girl to lose her chastity for no reason. Although Yunyi knew that he did not really do anything to the girl, the fact that the two of them were hugging each other naked was not a pleasant thing to say. Chen Yubing. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes with a murderous glint before she told Yunyi, brother, I'll handle this for you. How dare Chen Yubing set her eyes on her brother? Then, was she ready to accept her wrath? Chapter 313. In the end, Yun Jian got Ce to drive Yunyi home first while Qingyu followed Yun Jian. Ce was very obedient to Yun Jian. Once he heard that Yun Jian wanted him to bring his future brother-in-law home first, he quickly dragged him away. Slaying, he's your brother? Qingyu looked up at Yun Jian and asked shyly. Yun Jian grinned and patted Qingyu's shoulder, saying casually, let's go. It's rare for us to meet again after our last parting. Let's do something big. Everyone knew that slaying God loved money. Look, she had just been reborn in Longmen City for a few months and had already started new cruise. Whatever capital she had invested, she was earning back double now. In her past life, Yun Jian's mission had never been less than $10 million. Yun Jian had been diligent and happy in accepting missions in her past life. Of course, when Yun Jian accepted a lot of missions, she would even bring Qing Yu with her for convenience. Qing Yu would poison a bunch of people, but what about Yun Jian? She would kill when she had to and sneak when she had to. Both of them had completed many missions together. Ha! Qing Yu chuckled when she heard that they were going to do something big and followed Yun Jian eagerly. As for Chen Yubing, she was certain that Yun Yi would not be able to escape from her this time. She had even drugged herself so that her scheme could be carried out smoothly. Of course, Chen Yubing came to the hotel later than Yun Jian and Ce. She felt that there was no need for her to rush. Yun Yi was already in her hands now, she had to take it slow. In order to make sure that her trick was flawless, she even ran home to get the only color camera in her house. When Chen Yubing took the camera, however, she swallowed the aphrodisiac. Yao Yao ran excitedly from home to the 6th floor of the hotel. When she arrived at the hotel room that she had booked, she was knocked unconscious by someone with a stick. When she woke up again, Chen Yubing had been tied up by Yun Jian. What was going on? Chen Yubing seemed to have suddenly realized the danger. She looked at Yun Jian in horror and asked, "You? Why are you here?" Yun Jian sneered when she heard Chen Yubing ask her why she was here. She stared coldly at Chen Yubing and her eyes flashed with a strong sense of viciousness. "What do you think? You, what do you want to do to me?" Chen Yubing raised her voice in fear. At this time, Chen Yubing felt that the aphrodisiac in her body began to take effect. She gave herself an aphrodisiac too, Qing Yu told Yun Jian as she looked at Chen Yubing. Qing Yu was an expert in using poison. At the same time, she was well versed in all kinds of medicine, so she could tell at first glance that Chen Yubing had given herself an aphrodisiac too. Yun Jian did not expect Chen Yubing to give herself that kind of medicine. She looked disgusted and turned to look at Qing Yu with a smirk. Since she likes this medicine so much, give her something stronger. "You, what do you want to do to me?" Chen Yubing screamed when she heard Yun Jian. She looked at Yun Jian in extreme fear and screamed. "I'll be generous and let you experience what you wanted to do to my brother." Yun Jian smirked maliciously. Chapter 314. Sister Jian, I've recently developed a super potent aphrodisiac. I was worried that no one would test it on me. Qing Yu pouted, a wicked smirk on her adorable doll-like face. She told Yun Jian. In her past life, Qing Yu had always called Yun Jian slaying, but their identities were different now. Moreover, Yun Jian did not show up as slaying god, so Qing Yu called her Sister Jian instead. Use it on her and throw her out on the street. Yun Jian recollected her disgust and stood up to declare her sovereignty. "No, you can't do this to me, you can't do this to me. I won't let you go if you do this to me." Chen Yubing shrieked again when she heard Yun Jian's judgment. "I'll be waiting." Yun Jian chuckled and looked at Chen Yubing in disdain, continuing, "Do you think I'll give you a chance to retaliate? Chen Yubing, you should have expected this day to come since you dared to hit on my brother." "Sister Jian, the injection is ready," Qing Yu told Yun Jian as she came over with a syringe in her hand. Yun Jian nodded, ignoring Chen Yubing who screamed and cried and begged for mercy. Qing Yu looked sweet but she was born with the ability to concoct and administer poison. Her hand that held the syringe plunged the syringe into Chen Yubing's body mercilessly. Chen Yubing's eyes rolled back and she fainted. There was an exciting striptease going on the street. Chen Yubing's mouth was agape as she unconsciously touched her skin on the crowded street, tearing off piece after piece of underwear. Chen Yubing wasn't particularly ugly. Her skin was slightly white, and at this moment, she was lying on the crowded street, constantly pulling off her clothes. She was moaning softly, "I'm hot, hot." As more and more people gathered around, Chen Yubing became more and more excited as she tore at her clothes. In the end, she even tore off her underwear. At this moment, Yun Yi's classmates walked out of the karaoke hall together. Seeing a lot of people on the street, they ran over to take a look out of curiosity. He wouldn't have known if he didn't look, but when he did, he was shocked. It turned out to be Chen Yubing taking off her clothes in front of everyone on the street. Furthermore, he was completely naked. "Chen, it's Chen Yubing." A student pointed at Chen Yubing, who was lying on the ground, and shouted in shock and fear. Not far from the main street, Yun Jian's tall and slender figure was wrapped in a loose down jacket. The jacket couldn't cover her thin and slender body. Her long black hair was stuck to her back in a high ponytail, making Yun Jian look very energetic. On the other side, Chen Yubing had completely lost her face. From now on, she would be despised by everyone because of her actions today. This was the outcome of those who dared to lay their hands on Yun Jian's brother. "Sister Jian, that's it? You're not going to kill her?" Qing Yu, who stood aside, blinked and asked in surprise. Forget about a woman like Chen Yubing who schemed against Yun Jian's brother. Yun Jian in her past life would have killed those who spoke rudely. According to Yun Jian's style in her past life, it would be a miracle if she did not chop Chen Yubing into pieces. That was why Qing Yu was surprised. She had a baby face and mediocre skills, but she was used to fighting and killing when she was with Yun Jian. Chapter 315. After what had happened, Yun Yi would keep an eye out in the future, but no one had expected Chen Yubing to do something like this. In spite of it, Chen Yubing had really met her retribution. The next day, shocking news spread from Yun Yi's school. Everyone in the school knew that Chen Yubing was having a gathering with her classmates on a certain street yesterday, but for some reason, she had taken off her clothes on the street and was completely naked in the end. Some called her an exhibitionist, while others called her a slut who could not help feeling lonely without a man. Chen Yubing was completely ruined here. In spite of this, it was no longer important because Chen Yubing transferred schools the next day and no one knew where she had gone to. At the same time, Yun Jian had already enrolled Qing Yu in school using New Cruise's name. Qing Yu was about the same age as Yun Jian. She was assigned to Yun Jian's class and became Yun Jian's classmate. Not everyone could enroll in Longmen Junior High School, especially since Qing Yu was a transfer student. It was even more difficult to arrange for her to enroll directly. In spite of it, Yun Jian's new cruise had already established a foothold in Longmen City. Yun Jian only had to get Zhang Xiaofan to greet the headmaster of Longmen Junior High School, and Qing Yu was successfully enrolled. After Qing Yu became Yun Jian's classmate, she got along well with Chen Sini, which surprised Yun Jian. Qing Yu and Chen Sini got to know each other quickly once they met. Both of them had endless things to talk about with Yun Jian around, nearly causing Yun Jian's ears to grow calluses. Everything seemed to have settled down. This weekend, Qing Yu and Chen Sini went shopping in the neighboring city early in the morning. They went there because while Longmen City was a city with convenient transportation and overseas trade, there was a place called the World Trade Center in Qingshan City that was closest to Longmen City. It was a huge shopping mall that was famous in the country. The World Trade Center was the must-visit place in Zhe Province. This was because the World Trade Center was not only the place with the most overseas transactions in Z country. Here, as long as there were domestic and foreign items, they could be bought. When girls went shopping for clothes, the World Trade Center was undoubtedly the first choice. Because here, one could appreciate the style of clothing from all over the world. When Yun Jian was reborn in Zhe Province's Longmen City, she had never been to the World Trade Center in Qingshan City, which was the closest to Longmen City. In addition, she was not going to the military training camp this week, and the coldest winter was coming. She also planned to buy some warm clothes for Xiao Yunju. Therefore, he followed Qing Yu, Chen Sini, and took Xiao Yunju on the bus to Qingshan City. She was going to the World Trade Center to pick out some warm clothes for Xiao Yunju. When Ce heard that Yun Jian was bringing Xiao Yunju to Qingshan City, he followed them without a word. The group of 5 chose to take the bus to Qingshan City. Unexpectedly, the bus to Qingshan City was packed with people. It was so crowded that they would be squashed if they stood, let alone seats. Qing Yu was immobilized in the crowded bus. She even complained to Yun Jian, "Oh my God, Sister Jian, I've never taken such a crowded bus in my life." Yun Jian, on the other hand, was pulling the handle of the bus driver as she shielded Xiao Yunju with one hand. It was Ce's first time taking the bus, and it was also his first time taking such a crowded bus. In spite of it, he kept one hand shielding Yun Jian as he stood behind Yun Jian to watch over Yun Jian and Xiao Yunju. They looked like newlyweds bringing their children out for a vacation. A middle-aged woman in her 40s could not take it anymore. She gave up her seat and told Yun Jian, "Young lady, I'll let you have my seat. It's not easy for a young lady like you to take care of a child." It was obvious that the woman saw Yun Jian, Ce, and Xiao Yunju as a family. Chapter 316. Thank you. Ce was delighted to hear the woman's misunderstanding. Before Yun Jian could speak, he took over for her and pulled Yun Jian to the seat the woman had vacated, letting Yun Jian carry Xiao Yunju. Ce's heartwarming gesture made the woman exclaim, "Ah, it's so good to be young." Yun Jian's cheeks flushed, but she accepted the woman's kindness without explaining anything. She thought that she could squeeze in with the crowd, but Xiao Yunju was small and it was difficult for him to stand in the crowded bus. If he was not careful, he might bump into something. Therefore, Yun Jian accepted the woman's kindness and thanked her. Xiao Yunju was being carried in Yun Jian's arms obediently. He blinked his large eyes, his long eyelashes fluttering. His thin and frail body did not look like an 8-year-old child. Xiao Yunju looked more childish and was much shorter than his peers. It was probably because this body had not been well nourished in the past that he looked like he was 4 or 5 years old at most. Yun Jian was dressed more maturely than usual today, which was a stark contrast to her usual 15 or 16-year-old face. That was why the woman had misunderstood that Yun Jian was Yun Jian's child. After all, there were girls who became mothers at such a young age. It was fortunate that Qingshan City was not far from Longmen City. Qingyu, Chensini, and Ce, who did not have seats, only stood for about 45 minutes before they reached the final stop. When they reached the final stop, they took the second bus and arrived at the World Trade Center, which was also the entrance of the World Trade Center. The World Trade Center located in Qingshan City had a daily turnover of $10 million. This undoubtedly made the World Trade Center the most famous shopping mall in the area. Yun Jian got off the second bus and walked in front holding Xiao Yunju's hand. Ce followed beside her. Qingyu and Chensini held hands as they were dazed by the dazzling array of merchandise. They had no idea where they had run off to. Qingyu had been through a lot, but she still had the innocent heart of a young girl. Moreover, she was with her new friend, Chensini. Both of them looked around and walked away quickly. Before Qingyu and Chensini walked away, however, they set a meeting place with Yun Jian. Yun Jian then grabbed Xiao Yunju's hand and went shopping on the menswear street. The entire street was filled with men's wear, and the children's wear that was suitable for Xiao Yunju was on this street as well. Yun Jian grabbed Xiao Yunju's hand and was about to step into a store that sold children's wear with Ce when a surprised voice came from the side. "It's you?" The surprised male voice made Yun Jian's eyelids twitch. It was then that Yun Jian recognized the owner of the ecstatic voice. Yun Jian frowned slightly when she saw the person but did not pay attention to him right away. The person thought that Yun Jian did not remember him. He was a little disappointed but also surprised. "Don't you remember me? I'm Chen Yan. We met last time at Weiwu Mountain." Of course, it was not that Yun Jian did not remember him, but she did not want to bother with him. She didn't expect to meet someone she had met before here. Yun Jian replied faintly. Ce stood aside and looked at the man who had appeared out of nowhere. A glint flashed across his eagle-like eyes. Chen Yan did not expect to meet the girl he had been thinking about last time here. He did not even notice Ce, who was standing beside Yun Jian, and introduced himself in a friendlier manner to Yun Jian. Chapter 317. Yun Jian didn't answer him. Even though Yun Jian didn't answer, Chen Yan wasn't disheartened. When he first saw Yun Jian at Weiwu Mountain, Chen Yan felt that his spring had arrived. Yun Jian's graceful figure and her beautiful and delicate face had always been deeply imprinted in Chen Yan's heart. It felt as if a small sapling had suddenly sprouted when it met the sun. Chen Yan had a few girlfriends before, so he quickly realized that he had fallen in love with Yun Jian at first sight. However, he didn't expect to meet her here after they parted that day. This made Chen Yan feel that they were definitely fated to meet. He decided that he would definitely woo her. Chen Yan suddenly stretched out his hand to grab Yun Jian's small hand as he muttered, "It's fate that brought us together. I'm not a bad person. It means that we are fated to meet each other. Let's go, I'll show you around." However, before Chen Yan's hand could even touch a strand of Yun Jian's hair, Yun Jian was pulled into Ce's embrace. Ce frowned. If that gaze could kill, Chen Yan would have died 1,000,000 times over. "Don't touch my woman." Ce immediately declared his sovereignty. Yun Jian was pulled into his embrace. She only felt that she was covered by a warm chest and her hand was holding on to the confused Xiao Yunju. "What? Your woman?" Chen Yan didn't notice Ce at first, but now, even if he was blind, he should have sensed Ce's presence. Ce was about half a head taller than Chen Yan, so Chen Yan had to look up to meet Ce's eyes. When Chen Yan heard Ce say that Yun Jian was his woman, his eyelids twitched and he looked disappointed. "Sister, what did brother Ce mean when he said that you're his woman? Does that mean that sister will be able to accompany brother Ce forever? Then Xiao Zhu also wants big sister to become Xiao Zhu's woman, okay?" Xiao Yunju looked at them talking. He rubbed his head as if he was thinking for a long time before saying these words. Cough. Yun Jian was almost frightened by Xiao Yunju's innocent words. She broke free from Ce's embrace and squatted down to rub Xiao Yunju's head. Finally, she stood up and slapped Ce's hand. "Don't talk nonsense." With Yun Jian's pat, Ce felt a surge of warmth in his heart. He smiled slightly and reached out to grab Yun Jian's slender hands, interlocking their fingers. When Chen Yan saw Ce holding Yun Jian's hand, his expression turned slightly ugly. However, when he thought about how Yun Jian had said to Ce, "Don't talk nonsense," his disappointed expression immediately recovered. It seemed like this guy's feelings for Yun Jian were one-sided, but Yun Jian didn't like him. That must be it. Chen Yan thought to himself. Although this guy was handsome and had good features, he admitted that he couldn't compare to him. But what if they were to compete in strength? Could this guy compare to him, who was the vice president of the school's taekwondo club and had won countless championships in various taekwondo, wushu, sanda, and other activities? So what if he was good-looking? He was still a gigolo. How could he be as manly as him? When he thought of this, Chen Yan started scolding Ce. "Didn't you realize that she doesn't like you? You should know your place. If you're a man, you shouldn't touch a girl like this." As Chen Yan spoke, he reached out to pat Ce's hand that was holding Yun Jian's hand. In Chen Yan's opinion, Ce was at most a gigolo. So what if he was handsome? Chapter 318. Shen Yan thought about it and decided to do it. He reached out his hand and wanted to slap Ce's hand away from Yun Jian's. He wanted to use this opportunity to throw Ce to the ground using taekwondo moves. If he presented himself in such a cool manner in front of Yunjian, she would definitely think that he was especially manly. Just as Shen Yan was about to grab Ce smugly and throw him to the ground in front of all the passers-by, Ce, a fair and slender hand with a black pocket watch on the wrist, seemed to know what he was going to do in the next second. That well-defined hand grabbed Shen Yan's elbow a few steps faster than him. Ce reached out and grabbed Shen Yan's elbow. His other hand that was holding Yunjian's hand didn't move. When his other hand touched Shen Yan's hand, he twisted Shen Yan's elbow joint. Kacha, 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 the sound of bones breaking could be heard one after another. In the next second, Shen Yan's howl resounded through the sky. Ah! Below Shen Yan's elbow, all the bones in his hand were dislocated by Ce. The heart-wrenching pain spread through Shen Yan's elbow. His wailing and howling attracted the attention of passers-by. Apart from the intense pain from his elbow, Shen Yan was also suffering from immense fear in his heart. She had thought that Ce was a pretty boy, a useless piece of trash with a handsome face but no ability. However, when Ce attacked just now, his speed was so fast that he couldn't even see it with his naked eye. Was that even a human speed? Shen Yan swore that even the head coach of the International Taekwondo Club, whom he had the honor of meeting, wasn't as good as Ce. This was the first time Shen Yan had experienced the feeling of living a life worse than death. At this moment, Ce had already retracted his hand. One of his hands was still holding on to Yunjian, while the other hand that had touched Shen Yan took out a piece of tissue from his pocket. He wiped the hand that had touched Shen Yan with the tissue, then threw the tissue into the air. The tissue flew in an arc in the air for a while before it was thrown accurately into a circular trash can more than 10 meters away from them. The surrounding people who saw this opened their mouths wide and stared dumbfoundedly at the tall figure. A handsome man who was 185 meters tall with short black hair and dressed in simple black stood in the middle. His big palm was still holding the small hand of a young girl. He looked at Shen Yan, whose elbow had been dislocated, wantonly and spat out a domineering and elegant word between his thin lips. Get lost. Some people were born with the air of a king. Ce was undoubtedly one of them, and he was one of the best among them. Ce was now fuming with anger. How could a piece of trash like him taint his woman? Yunjian pursed her lips and covered Xiao Yunju's eyes to prevent him from seeing this scene. She personally didn't like Shen Yan very much. Hence, she didn't intend to pay any attention to him. Shen Yan thought that she and Ce didn't know what he was doing, but how could she and Ce not be willing to come out? Let's go. Yunjian turned to Ce and said. However, Ce's face was still gloomy. He grabbed Yunjian's hand and left. At the same time, he pulled Yunjian to a secluded corner where Xiao Yunju stood in front of Yunjian. Ce leaned over Yunjian. He pressed Yunjian against the wall and said with a trace of anger, "You can only be mine." Chapter 319. Yunjian's heart raced. She felt like her heart was pounding wildly in her chest. She did not understand why Ce was suddenly angry, but she covered Xiao Yunju's eyes with one hand and held Ce's head with the other, responding to his kiss for the first time. Everything else aside, she had feelings for Ce. The fluttering of her maiden's heart told her that she had feelings for him that were different from others. Both of them kissed until they were almost out of breath before Ce let go of Yunjian. Xiao Yunju's eyes were covered throughout the entire process. Xiao Yunju, however, felt the odd atmosphere as well. He blinked his big eyes and looked up to ask Yunjian, "Jijia, why did you cover Xiao Zhu's eyes? Are you and Ce going to play hide-and-seek with Xiao Zhu?" Children's innocence was the most interesting but also the most ignorant. Yunjian rubbed Xiao Yunju's head and turned to glare at Ce with a hint of complaint. "Let's go. Jie will buy you new clothes." Yunjian held Xiao Yunju's hand and walked ahead first. Ce had both hands in his pockets. Watching Yun Jian walk ahead, he raised a handsome brow and followed her. By the time Yun Jian bought a few new warm clothes for Xiao Yunju, Qing Yu and Chen Sini had already bought a bunch of things and were waiting for Yun Jian, Ce, and Xiao Yunju at the agreed spot. They had been shopping for the entire morning and had lunch near the World Trade Center before Yun Jian and the rest went home. The public transport from Qingshan City back to Longmen City was not as crowded as the public transport from Longmen City to Qingshan City. It was probably due to Qingshan City's outstanding transportation and trade. In addition, as the provincial capital of Zhe Province, Qingshan City's economic conditions were at the forefront of country Z. Therefore, there were more people going to Qingshan City. As for the bus back to Longmen City, it was enough for one person to take 2 seats. After the previous incident, Yun Jian had gradually taken Ce to heart. She also understood her own feelings. Her feelings for Ce were different from the feelings she had for Qin Yiru and her brother, Yun Yi. On the weekend night, Yun Jian carried her school bag and went to school as usual. But before she could walk out of the house, she was blocked by a tall figure. Ce had his hands in his pockets. One of his legs was slightly curled up as he leaned against the wall, waiting for her. "I'm going away for a while. If you need my help in the Kosha mercenaries, you can contact Shuang anytime." Ce went up to rub Yun Jian's head when he saw her walking over. As he spoke, his eyes stared straight at her. The indulgence in his words was not concealed at all. Be careful, Yun Jian could not help reminding him. Ce was stunned. The corners of his handsome lips curled into a handsome smile. She was concerned about him. Carrying her school bag, Yun Jian passed by a fork in the corner after she came out of her house. It was a secluded alley. At this moment, her eyes suddenly flickered. Not long after, a group of more than 10 people came from all directions and surrounded Yun Jian. This group of people were all dressed in black, which made people involuntarily think of gangsters. A coquettishly dressed woman walked over from behind Yun Jian while leaning against a plump man. Yun Jian's eyes flickered as she took a good look at the woman's face. The woman who had changed her appearance was none other than Chen Yubing, who had tried to harm her brother, Yun Yi, some time ago. Chen Yubing looked completely different now. She had heavy makeup on her face as she snuggled in the man's arms who was in his 40s and old enough to be her father. Chapter 320. It had only been a few days and Chen Yubing had changed so drastically. Moreover, she was currently nestled in the arms of a man in his 40s. Yun Jian felt goosebumps rising all over her body at the sight alone. However, she never showed her feelings on her face. Yun Jian maintained her usual nonchalant expression as she stared at Chen Yubing. Chen Yubing was noticeably thinner than before. More importantly, she had taken off her student uniform and put on a very revealing off-shoulder top. She even wore a pair of high heels. The biggest change was her face. Her originally pretty face was now covered with makeup, and her face was now unrecognizable. The face covered in heavy makeup was currently staring at Yun Jian with a twisted expression. She looked like she wanted to cut Yun Jian into 1,000 pieces. "Kill me?" Yun Jian asked flippantly. Looking at the fat man beside Chen Yubing, she could roughly guess what Chen Yubing had done. In fact, what Chen Yubing had done was not far from Yun Jian's guess. The aphrodisiac that Chen Yubing had been drugged with last time was developed by Qing Yu. However, those who were drugged with it would lose consciousness for a short period of time and feel waves of heat flowing through their bodies. If the drugged person did not have a strong will, they would strip themselves naked in no time. As for what Chen Yubing had done afterward, Yun Jian had no idea. However, looking at how Chen Yubing was nestled in the man who was old enough to be her father, it was not hard to tell that she had latched onto this man's coattails. "Yun Jian, do you think you can do whatever you want in Longmen City just because you have some skills? I'm telling you, Chen Yubing, won't let you go even if I become a ghost." Chen Yubing's twisted smile was menacing. No one knew what she had gone through. After she woke up, she was lying naked on the road for everyone to see. She was ruined. Her future was ruined. However, Chen Yubing swore that she would take revenge on Yun Jian. In spite of it, Chen Yubing knew that Yun Jian had some skills. Last time, the yellow-haired man who wanted to deal with Yun Yi was defeated by Yun Jian. This time, Chen Yubing was hugging the fat middle-aged man she was snuggling against. He was a gangster. He was different from the weak yellow-haired guy from before. The middle-aged man was a gangster and the second-in-command of the Nine Valleys Gang, the second-largest mafia group in Longmen City. People in the underworld called him Xiong Eru. Chen Yubing was determined to go against Yun Jian to the end. She was already ruined, so she was willing to give herself to Xiong Eru. This time, she had asked Xiong Eru to lead a group of people to surround Yun Jian in order to take revenge for what Yun Jian had done to her. In Chen Yubing's opinion, she hated Yun Jian so much that she was willing to exchange her body for power to deal with Yun Jian. "Brother Xiong, she's the one who bullied me. You must avenge me," Chen Yubing said as she pointed her finger at Yun Jian. Before she could finish, however, the atmosphere changed. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. Not long after, a group of people rushed in from the front and back of the alley. A round-looking man led a group of men with guns over. The man went to Yun Jian and bowed respectfully at a 90 degrees angle to Yun Jian, saying respectfully, "Miss Yun, our boss invites you." Yun Jian could tell at a glance that the man was Su Zetian's subordinate and also a higher-up in Longmen City's top mafia group, Dragon Head Gang. When Xiong Eru, who was called Brother Xiong, saw this man and his group, his eyes widened, and there was a trace of indescribable fear in his eyes. He was the second-in-command of the Nine Valleys Gang, but the Nine Valleys Gang, the second-largest mafia group in Longmen City, dared not offend people from the top mafia group, Dragon Head Gang. His temporary bed partner, Chen Yubing, who was just an ordinary junior high school girl whom he wanted to surround, Yun Jian, could command such respect from Dragon Head Gang's higher-ups. Chapter 321. The round-looking man was the underling of Longmen City's mafia boss, Su Zetian. He was also a high-ranking member of Dragon Head Gang, Sun Zhengwei. Yun Jian knew him. She had interacted with many of Dragon Head Gang's high-ranking members when she fought for Su Zetian in the tournament. Since her victory in the tournament, Su Zetian and the high-ranking members of Dragon Head Gang respected her even more. Yun Jian nodded softly, agreeing to Sun Zhengwei's request. Su Zetian wanted to see her. Even though Su Zetian hadn't contacted her since the last challenge tournament, he was still the father of her brother's best friend. Moreover, Su Zetian was also a member of the Kosha mercenaries. His position was low, but she was not one to put on airs. "Miss Yun, please." Sun Zhengwei gestured for permission, intending to let Yun Jian go first. Just as Yun Jian took a step forward, Chen Yubing's vengeful voice rang again, "Wait. Yun Jian, don't think you can leave so easily." Chen Yubing was a little afraid of Sun Zhengwei and his men with guns, but she had heard Xiong Eru bragging so much when she had sex with him that she thought he was a fearless person in Longmen City. Moreover, Xiong Eru had told Chen Yubing that he would seek justice from Yun Jian for her before they came. How could Chen Yubing sit still when she saw that Yun Jian was leaving? She shouted angrily at once. "Yun Jian, do you think it'll work just because you found a helper? Huh, Brother Xiong will definitely kill you for me." Chen Yubing snuggled up to Xiong Eru. Her round breasts were almost touching Xiong Eru's chest. A teenage girl with a man old enough to be her father. It was an unflattering sight. "Isn't that right, Brother Xiong?" Chen Yubing, on the other hand, seemed to want Xiong Eru's guarantee. She leaned closer to Xiong Eru. To Chen Yubing, she had sacrificed her body to make a deal with Xiong Eru in order to take revenge on Yun Jian, who had ruined her reputation. She did not believe that she could not destroy Yun Jian. Ha! Listening to Chen Yubing's confident words and looking at how she leaned on the man, Yun Jian could not help scoffing with a small smile. What are you laughing at? Brother Xiong, she's bullying me. You have to help me. You said you'll help me. In bed, Brother Xiong had promised her that he would help her get rid of Yun Jian, whom she hated the most. This was why Chen Yubing had been serving Xiong Eru with all her hearts. Otherwise, how could a young girl like Chen Yubing be willing to face a man who was as old as her father every day? She wasn't a fool, so how could she be willing to do that? Xiong Eru, Miss Yun is an honored guest of our Dragon Head gang. She's someone that even our boss has to respect. Our boss said that whoever dares to touch Miss Yun in Longmen City will be going against Dragon Head gang. Sun Zhengwei obviously knew Xiong Eru. He spoke to Xiong Eru with a threatening tone. Everyone knew that Dragon Head Gang was the top mafia group in Longmen City, while the Nine Valleys Gang could only be ranked second. Even the Nine Valleys Gang's boss dared not go against Dragon Head Gang, let alone Xiong Eru. Chapter 322. When Xiong Eru and Chen Yubing were having S**X, he had indeed bragged about his abilities and even boasted that there was no one in Longmen City that he could not touch. Chen Yubing was vengeful and was tricked by Xiong Eru. Not only did she offer her body to him, she was also slapped in return. Chen Yubing, who was slapped to the ground by Xiong Eru, had mixed feelings. Holding the side of her face that was slapped, her small eyes narrowed. Big brother Xiong, why you didn't keep your word? You promised me. Chen Yubing didn't realize that something was wrong. She stared at Xiong Eru with her eyes wide open. Her face was filled with disbelief and malevolence. King Hell, I almost ruined my future because of you. The person you King offended is someone protected by Dragon Head Gang's boss, and you dare ask me to avenge you? Xiong Eru slapped Chen Yubing in front of Yun Jian and Sun Zhengwei. Xiong Eru was definitely a despicable person. The fact that he could lay his hands on the woman in his arms earlier proved that he was not a good person. In spite of it, Xiong Eru was sly and cunning. He could think of ways to resolve problems in time. This was the most important skill in the underworld. King B** TCH. How dare you order me around? CK your whole family. Without needing Yun Jian to do anything, Xiong Eru picked up Chen Yubing's head and messed up her hair before slamming it to the ground. It was as if he was treating a prisoner. He did not treat Chen Yubing as a human being at all. Chen Yubing felt like a knife was being twisted in her heart. She cried out in pain, but her mouth opened and closed in the end, unable to utter a single word. In the end, Chen Yubing's head was slammed to the ground by Xiong Eru until she bled and fainted completely. Chen Yubing, who was originally bright and beautiful, seemed to have completely fallen into a quagmire. She was as silent as death. Xiong Eru didn't even look at Chen Yubing, who had once been in love with him. He walked over with a smile, stood in front of Sun Zhengwei, and said to Yun Jian in a flattering tone, I was blind just now and offended you. I've already taught this shameless woman a lesson. I hope the two of you can forgive me. Xiong Eru didn't have any other skills, but he was very good at flattering people. This was especially true for Chen Yubing. After all, Chen Yubing was a woman who had been with him for a period of time. In the end, because of Chen Yubing, Xiong Eru had almost harmed him. However, Xiong Eru had used the most direct method to make up for what he had almost done wrong. Judging from his personality, Xiong Eru wasn't a pushover. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. She would not sympathize with Chen Yubing. Chen Yubing was purely reaping what she had sown. She deserved this retribution. Yun Jian ignored Xiong Eru and didn't look at the unconscious Chen Yubing. She turned around and left with Sun Jingwei. This was the way of the world. If one wasn't strong, especially a woman, and wanted to rely on a man to get to the top, what awaited her could be a vicious beating or a cruel betrayal at any time. And Chen Yubing was undoubtedly one of them. Yun Jian didn't go to the evening self-study session. She took a car with Sun Jingwei and soon arrived at the headquarters of the Dragon Head Gang. In front of a decent-looking tall building. Chapter 323. The higher-ups of Dragon Head Gang were having a meeting in the conference room. Once Yun Jian followed Sun Jingwei inside, all the higher-ups in Dragon Head Gang stood up at once. Although no one knew who Yun Jian was, no one could forget Yun Jian's stunning performance in the challenge tournament. Even the higher-ups who had a particular opinion of Yun Jian had to keep quiet when they saw Yun Jian. "Miss Yun, you're here." Standing among the higher-ups, Su Zetian, who was dressed formally, did not look old. He walked toward Yun Jian, his respect for Yun Jian evident from his solemn expression. Why did you send someone to look for me?" Yun Jian did not like to beat around the bush, going straight to the point. Su Zetian hadn't looked for her since the last challenge tournament. In fact, Yun Jian was not close to him, but they bumped into each other often. She often saw her brother, Yun Yi, and Su Haokol playing together. Su Haokol was Su Zetian's son, so it was only natural that they would bump into each other when they walked together. "Miss Yun, it's like this," Su Zetian said. He paused for a moment before continuing. "We, Dragon Head Gang, are the top mafia group in Longmen City and also the mafia representative of Longmen City. In fact, a national mafia tea party will be held in the underworld a few days later. The organized mafia group will invite the mafia bosses from all over the country to attend the tea party along with their experts." The nationwide mafia tea party was, to put it bluntly, a competition of skills. It was a gathering where all the major gangs sent their experts to learn from each other. There'll also be a ranking of the experts from all the major provinces and cities participating in the mafia group's strength. Therefore, on behalf of our Dragon Head Gang, I sincerely hope that you can join our Dragon Head Gang and participate in this tea party as one of our experts. Su Zetian said sincerely, but at the same time, he stared at Yun Jian without blinking. To put it bluntly, the reason why Su Zetian asked Sun Jingwei to invite Yun Jian over was to invite her to join the Dragon Head Gang. Secondly, he wanted her to attend the tea party organized by all the gangs in the country as a member of Dragon Head Gang. Okay. After hearing Su Zetian's words, Yun Jian wasn't in a hurry to agree. She pursed her lips and raised her eyebrows. She then asked Su Zetian in a probing tone, "Then, what are the benefits?" If he wanted her to help him attend such a gathering, he would naturally want some benefits. As the saying goes, one should not receive a reward for nothing. Even if Su Zetian was a member of the Kosha mercenaries, Yun Jian would treat him equally. "As long as Miss Yun agrees, then I, Su Zetian, will agree to any request you make," Su Zetian said boldly. This was probably the biggest promise that a mafia boss of a city could make. Although Su Zetian was only a mafia boss in a small Longmen city, the area of influence he had was not small. There were thousands of people in Dragon Head Gang. It was a considerable force. Yun Jian raised her eyebrows and smirked. Pressing her red lips together, she asked softly, "What if I want the entire Dragon Head Gang? Will you give it to me?" Once she said that, not only was Su Zetian stunned, everyone else's eyelids twitched. What a bold claim. She wanted the entire Dragon Head Gang? Even if she won the challenge tournament and displayed her extraordinary ability, she was still a Dragon Head Gang member. Chapter 324. You're too arrogant, young lady. We sincerely invited you to join us because we respect you as a powerhouse. I didn't expect you to be so bold as to ask for more. One of the Dragon Head Gang's higher-ups shouted at Yun Jian. Not long after, some of the higher-ups followed suit and spoke to Yun Jian. To the audience, Yun Jian had won the previous match and crippled the boastful foreigner, which was quite satisfying to them, but it was not the same for Yun Jian. However, Su Zetian had sincerely invited her to join Dragon Head Gang this time. Yet, Yun Jian did not appreciate the gesture. She had actually raised conditions and boasted that she wanted to replace Su Zetian as the mafia boss and take over the entire Dragon Head Gang. Compared to the rage of the other higher-ups, Su Zetian was much calmer. He looked at Yun Jian with a slight frown. Yun Jian, on the other hand, was not flustered. She even walked leisurely to an empty seat not far away and sat down, crossing one leg over the other. The expression on her face was very relaxed, and she did not feel the slightest bit strange when the higher-ups present suddenly turned hostile and said that she did not know what was good for her. When the higher-ups were done scolding her, Yun Jian turned to look at them with a pair of round eyes and asked softly with a wink, "Thank you for the scolding. Let's sit down and have some tea first." Once they heard Yun Jian, their eyes bulged again. A few of the higher-ups were even glaring, looking like they were choked by Yun Jian's frivolous words. Compared to the higher-ups, Su Zetian was much calmer. He seemed to have sensed something as he stood where he was without saying a word. It was only when the other higher-ups had calmed down that Su Zetian walked to Yun Jian. "Miss Yun, please enlighten us." Su Zetian was already standing in front of Yun Jian, maintaining his respectful demeanor. Even Yun Jian could not help narrowing her eyes at his demeanor. Su Zetian was indeed the top mafia boss of Longmen City. His value was incomparable to the other higher-ups. Yun Jian stretched out her hand and tapped the long conference table with her finger. Then she stood up and turned to look at Su Zetian. "You're undoubtedly the mafia boss of Longmen City now. No one can take your position away from you. It's true that you're as stable as a mountain, but don't you want to go one step further and become the mafia boss of the entire Zhe province and even the entire country?" Su Zetian was a mafia boss, but his influence was limited to Longmen City. It could be said that he was nothing outside of Longmen City. Not only did Yun Jian's words make Su Zetian's heart skip a beat, but the higher-ups of Dragon Head Gang could not help feeling alarmed as well. Everyone was content with the status quo. They had thought about how to strengthen their position in Longmen City, but no one had thought about it and no one dared to think about it. Dragon Head Gang was deeply rooted in Longmen City. Could they move to Zhe province one day? Becoming the #1 mafia in Zhe province. Leave Dragon Head Gang to me. I promise to make Dragon Head Gang the top mafia in country Z. Otherwise, I, Yun Jian, will write my name backwards. Yun Jian said abruptly, slamming the table as she stood up. For some reason, when the group heard Yun Jian's words again, they were not as resistant as they were in the beginning. Yes, everyone wanted to move forward. Now, it was as if Yun Jian had some kind of magical power. What she said made everyone's heart skip a beat. But at the same time, everyone was filled with a surge of hot blood. Chapter 325. When Su Zetian heard this, he immediately felt energized. Dragon Head Gang was actually a gang that Su Zetian had founded with his brothers. Dragon Head Gang was the culmination of half his life's effort and the expectations of all the higher-ups. It was not that Su Zetian had not thought about leading his brothers out of the tiny Longmen City and becoming the top gang in Zhe province or even country Z. However, he had never dared to do it because he did not have the capability nor the capability. Although he was a member of the Kosha mercenaries, Su Zetian was merely a nobody among the Kosha mercenaries. In spite of it, his heart that had been dormant for a long time finally surged again after he heard Yun Jian's words. "What makes you so sure that you can do it?" "It has been decades since our boss led us to establish the Dragon Head Gang. In these decades, even a group of old men like us, who are hundreds of times more experienced than you, could not be so frivolous as to say such words. What makes you think that you can lead our brothers in the Dragon Head Gang to become the top gang in Z country?" One of the higher-ups pointed out the problem once again. It did not mean that they would hand the gang over to Yun Jian just because she had stirred their blood with what she said just now. This was the result of half their life's effort and hard work to create what they had today. What made her think so? What made her think that they would hand Dragon Head Gang over to her just because she had said something that made everyone's blood boil? None of them were fools. All of them had the ability to distinguish right from wrong. Because I'm better than all of you. Because I'm the director of New Cruise. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and declared brashly, not mincing her words at all. What? New Cruise's director? After Yun Jian's words, someone was finally shocked and cried out. New Cruise was now a household name in Longmen City. It was a new company that had only been around for less than half a year, but it had achieved astounding results in less than half a year. Not long ago, the car show that New Cruise had helped organize was the largest car show that had never been heard of in the country. 3 limited edition supercars were displayed at the show. Which large-scale auto show could compete with it? Hence, New Cruise's name shot to fame overnight, not only in Longmen City but also in the national car exhibition scene. Moreover, New Cruise's sales of cars had reached a climax. It was no exaggeration to say that New Cruise had become a pioneer that led the advancement of the times. It took less than half a year for New Cruise to rise to this day. Now, Yun Jian, who claimed to be New Cruise's director, was standing in front of everyone. At this moment, it wasn't just the higher-ups of the Dragon Head Gang. Even Su Zetian was looking at the smiling girl in front of them in horror. They saw Yun Jian standing in front of the crowd. Her smile was very sweet, and within that faint smile, there was an aura that made everyone have no choice but to submit to her. Perhaps she could really lead Dragon Head Gang out of Longmen City and into Jia Province, or even become the top gang in Country Z. Su Zetian clenched his fists, gritted his teeth, and said resolutely to Yun Jian, "Fine. Dragon Head Gang is yours from now on." Su Zetian's decision was for the sake of his brothers in the gang. Chapter 326. Su Zetian was a good leader. From the time he led his brothers to establish Dragon Head Gang until now, he had always wished to lead them out of Longmen City. It was a wish that Su Zetian had always wanted, but he was incapable of making it happen. He had only wanted to invite Yun Jian to join Dragon Head Gang today but did not expect her to claim that she would take his place. As it turned out, Yun Jian's words struck a chord in Su Zetian's heart. His brothers had been with him for so many years, but they were still lingering in Longmen City. Su Zetian had long thought that if someone stronger than him were to lead them out of Longmen City one day, he would have to give up his position as Dragon Head Gang's boss immediately, even if he had to give up everything. Today, this person had appeared. Perhaps Yun Jian's age did not match her skills. It sounded impossible for her to take over Dragon Head Gang's position. However, Yun Jian was New Cruise's director. Yes. This was true because Su Zetian had seen Yun Jian's performance at the auto show that day. How could Yun Jian be an ordinary person when she could make New Cruise, which was founded less than half a year ago, rise so quickly and become a renowned company in Longmen City and even the country as a director? Therefore, Su Zetian agreed to take a gamble. Boss. Boss. No. The cries of Dragon Head Gang's higher-ups rang. Su Zetian closed his eyes and pondered for a long time before he gestured for everyone to quiet down. Say no more. I've already made up my mind. Su Zetian was a man who could let go of things easily. He waved his hand to signal for everyone to stop talking. Miss Yun, I'll hand Dragon Head Gang over to you. Su Zetian then turned to look at Yun Jian and expressed his opinion. Dragon Head Gang is the culmination of half of my life's work, so I hope you can manage the gang well. If possible, I hope you can lead my brothers out of Longmen City on my behalf. This was Su Zetian's plan. Yun Jian nodded and lifted her head slightly to look at Su Zetian before she turned to scan the crowd with a rare solemn gaze. Dragon Head Gang, your boss has been handed over to me. In that case, listen to me carefully. My gang doesn't allow any traitors or trash who ask for protection fees from the common people. If I find them, they will be killed without mercy. In addition, Dragon Head Gang will be renamed Falcon Hall from now on, but your boss will still be the one in charge of its management. In other words, Yun Jian was just acting as a hands-off boss. In the future, the management and arrangements of the gang would be left to Su Zetian. Everyone was shocked when they heard Yun Jian's decision. Especially Su Zetian. Normally, a new boss would kick the old boss out of the gang. However, Yun Jian was different. Not only did she not do that, but she also let Su Zetian continue to take over the gang's affairs. In that case, other than Yun Jian, who was now the boss in name, everything else was still the same as before. At this moment, the group of higher-ups instantly calmed down, and none of them made a fuss. After all, it was the best of both worlds. All of them wanted their gang to leave Longmen City, but they did not want Su Zetian to leave the gang. Logically speaking, a new boss would not keep the old boss, but Yun Jian was the complete opposite. Chapter 327. Happy working with you. Su Zetian shook his hand. It was only then that he put his hand down. Handing Dragon Head Gang over to Yun Jian was something he had never thought of. Since he had handed the gang over to Yun Jian, he had considered everything. Similarly, Su Zetian naturally wouldn't regret it. After Yun Jian took over Dragon Head Gang and renamed it Falcon Hall, she overhauled Falcon Hall. Although Yun Jian had taken over Dragon Head Gang, the original higher-ups of Dragon Head Gang treated her as their boss wholeheartedly because she had kept Su Zetian and allowed him to continue all his previous work. Yun Jian was actually disdainful to take over a mere Dragon Head Gang, which was the current Falcon Hall. However, her family was in Longmen City and so was her mother. It was only a matter of time before she would come into contact with the secret fights of her past life. An additional force meant an additional guarantee for her mother, brothers, and mother in Longmen City. Yun Jian had made the mistake of her past life once. She would not allow others to take advantage of her weakness again. A few days later, it was the tea party where all the gangs in the country gathered. Yun Jian was free these days. She used the free time to train Zhang Xiaofan. Zhang Xiaofeng's accuracy in throwing chopsticks had improved tremendously as well. After all, Zhang Xiaofeng was Yun Jian's first disciple. She would feel bad if she did not train him harder. On the weekend, Yun Jian purposely asked Zhang Xiaofeng out early in the morning. Yun Jian woke up at 4 in the morning. The sky was still dark and the surroundings were pitch black. Before Yun Jian stepped out of the house, she was stopped by Yun Yi, who had returned home this week. Xiao Jian. Yun Yi was wearing a casual white t-shirt. He was dressed casually and only had a pair of loose pants on his lower body. Brother, why are you up so early today? Yun Jian squatted down and tied her shoelaces before standing up. Xiao Jian, are you going to train? Yun Yi had already put on his white sports shoes. He asked Yun Jian and strode towards Yun Jian. Yun Jian nodded and said, yes, brother. She had never intended to hide the fact that she was exercising from Yun Yi. Qin Yiru already knew that she had joined the special forces, and so did her brother, Yun Yi. Xiao Jian, I know you've joined the special forces and there are plenty of ways to train your skills. I know I'm not as good as you, but I don't want to stand behind you for everything in the future. I want you to know that I've got your back. So, Xiao Jian, I want to train with you guys in the future, is that okay? Yun Yi blurted out. Every time something happened, it was his younger sister who stood up for him. Yun Yi was a man and he wanted to be strong too. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. She knew that her brother was asking her to train him. She was already worried about her brother and mother, Qin Yiru, when she was not around in the future. If Yunyi wanted to be strong, she was naturally willing to agree. Of course. Yun Jian's lips curled up into a smile. Since they were going to train, she would make her brother a powerhouse. She could prevent him from becoming a powerful killing machine, but at least dealing with third-rate assassins was her minimum requirement for her brother and Zhang Xiaofan. Chapter 328. The result of Yunyi joining as Yun Jian's training partner was to practice throwing chopsticks with Zhang Xiaofan and Yun Jian after their morning run. Zhang Xiaofan had been practicing throwing chopsticks for quite some time now. Even if he were to place an empty beer bottle tens of meters away, he would still be able to throw it accurately. Master's brother. You're practicing with me under Master. According to the rule of first come, first served, you have to call me senior brother. Zhang Xiaofan was bubbly as he went up to Yunyi and teased gleefully. Yunyi knew that Zhang Xiaofan was joking with him, but he only smiled and continued to practice throwing chopsticks. The task of throwing chopsticks sounded simple, but if the empty beer bottle was placed dozens of meters away, it would be difficult to throw the chopsticks again. Come here. Just as Zhang Xiaofan and Yunyi were teasing each other, Yun Jian waved a hand to signal Zhang Xiaofan to come to her. Master, what are you doing? Zhang Xiaofan asked, but he still ran over obediently. With a smile, Yun Jian watched as Zhang Xiaofan came to her and said, "Give me your hand." Zhang Xiaofan had no idea what was going on. He scratched his head and extended his hand in confusion, mumbling, "Master, what are you doing?" Before Zhang Xiaofan could finish his question, Yun Jian suddenly grabbed Zhang Xiaofang's elbow and pulled Zhang Xiaofan over to poke at his hard bones. It hurts, Master. Zhang Xiaofan shrieked in pain. In an instant, he was drenched in sweat. Xiao Jian, what are you doing? Seeing that Yun Jian was pinching Zhang Xiaofang's hard bones like she was dealing with a bad guy, Yunyi dropped her chopsticks and ran over. Yun Jian had already let go of Zhang Xiaofan. Zhang Xiaofan was as limp as a puddle of mud, almost falling over. Get up. You're not dead yet. Yun Jian patted Zhang Xiaofan, who was sprawled on the floor like he was about to die. Zhang Xiaofan moved the hard bones on his wrist and ankle that were pinched by Yun Jian out of the blue and almost suffocated him from the pain. Why doesn't it hurt anymore? Zhang Xiaofan swung his hand and stomped his foot, exclaiming in surprise. It was as if the pain that he was drenched in sweat just now was an illusion. Do you want to do it again? Yun Jian asked with a smirk. No. Zhang Xiaofan shouted in English due to his nervousness. Zhang Xiaofan then swung his arm and looked at Yun Jian curiously, asking, "Master, what were you doing just now?" Yunyi was equally curious as she looked at her younger sister with a puzzled expression. Your bones are hard now, but they won't become soft in a short period of time, so I was just stretching your flexibility. You can learn to do it yourself in the future, Yun Jian explained. She paused for a moment before continuing, flexibility is very important. If you don't have flexibility, then your training methods will be no different from ordinary people. Once Zhang Xiaofan heard that it was a new technique that he had not learned in a long time other than the practice of throwing chopsticks, he was pumped and went to Yun Jian, asking, Master, teach me. By the time Yun Jian taught Zhang Xiaofan and Yunyi, it was almost 6 or 7 o'clock. Zhang Xiaofan had something to do in the morning, so he waved goodbye to Yun Jian. Before leaving, he invited Yun Jian, Master, my father's company will hold a fancy party in a few days. You must come then. Cindy will definitely be there too. I'll let you know then. Zhang Xiaofan said, waving his hand and running away. With a smile, Yun Jian acquiesced to it. Yunyi was sweating profusely after Yun Jian's training. His white t-shirt was soaked in sweat, and his short hair was also hazy with sweat. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.